leadership, had taken the decision that that is the way to go, for Nigeria. I also would like to use this opportunity to commend the Honorable Minister for Trade, Industry and Investment, who has stood very, very solidly behind this, and also in his capacity as the chair of the National Action Committee of the AfCFTA. So I thank him. He's been represented today by Mr. Kamar, who will also be making his own the minister's presentation. And we are also in touch with the AfCFTA Secretariat in Accra, and His Excellency Wamkele, though he's unable to join us now because he's traveling, but he sends, very, very high regards, to NACCIMA, and also the private sector of Nigeria for the actualization, of the noble objectives of the AfCFTA, that we can meet the Agenda 2063, that is the Africa we want, and if you recall that this has been the objective of the founding fathers of the African Union as far back as 1963. So I thank you for and welcome you. It is obvious that the AfCFTA revolves around the private sector, even though the participating governments provide the enabling environment, for its success. For AfCFTA to succeed, it must be private sector driven, and that is why NACCIMA, as the leading voice of the organized private sector in Nigeria, is taking the driver's seat today. This commemorative event will be followed up immediately by a strategy session to chart, the way forward. NACCIMA in the days ahead will champion the launching AfCFTA fund to support our exporters, particularly the micro, small, and enterprises. And Nigeria is the largest economy and the largest market in Africa, must also put the machinery in motion to host the intra-African trade, which has already had tremendous success, in its 2 outings so far. Similarly, the size of our economy and population confer on us unique advantages that our siblings in the region can only wish for. What we do or do not do with that tremendous advantage will decide whether we become a net beneficiary of AfCFTA or will simply continue to be an import-dependent nation and a huge market for goods and services from other African countries without commensurate value. Hopefully, by the end of this decade, what we are doing today will be recorded in history as part of Nigeria's AfCFTA success story. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have assembled a galaxy of highly resourceful people, to give credence to what we are doing in the sector in Nigeria. And I want to thank and welcome them, for the efforts they have made, in some cases at very short notice, to be part of this very, very important call. So I wish you a very successful outing today, so that we can close the gaps that exist, so that we can move, AfCFTA forward in Nigeria. So I thank you most respectfully for coming. Our National President, Ide John Ideagbala, will be joining us. He's also attending a very important function in Akwa Ibom, and he us, as soon as he can get away, so that he can also make a very brief remark. On this note, I would like to hand over to the chairman of the occasion, Prince Adetokunbo, the SAN, the former president of ACCI, so that he can introduce, the Honorable Minister, for Industry, Trade and Investment, who is being represented here because he's on the call also as we speak in Dakar with Mr. President, for a very important summit. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much, and I hope that when the opportunity comes for speakers to get on board, they will please be very, very time conscious, and so that we can tidy up quickly, so that people don't have an overrun. So please let me call on Prince Adetokunbo, please, as chairman of the occasion. to introduce the Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very successful outing today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Second Deputy Chair, NACCIMA Chair of the AfCFTA, and of course the convener of this webinar. We thank you very much again for giving us information about the inability of Mr. Mene to join us. We understand that. I will now wish to invite the representative of the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment and Chair of the AfCFTA Action Committee to please deliver a keynote address on behalf of the Honorable Minister. Thank you.
Mr. President, I can see that the Secretariat has joined, and if the Secretariat has joined, if they have the name of the representative, we can please kindly just either call him or to let us have the remarks
Yes.
of the Honorable Minister. Okay.
Your Excellency, is Mr. Kamal that is representing the minister. I think if he's on this call at the moment.
Yes, I can see Mr. Kamal Barkin.
Yes,
it's over to you, sir.
Yeah.
Mr. Kamal.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I apologize. I believe I had a very brief outage on my part, so I suspect maybe I was being looked for at that point. My apologies. I'm happy to proceed with the Honorable Minister's remarks, if that is okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Again, it is an honor to be representing the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Otumba Adeni Adebayo, my boss, and the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment at this distinguished event. I will proceed with his speech, standing on existing protocols. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly excited to be addressing you today as we commemorate the signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. I would like to commend NACCIMA for giving a voice to Nigeria's organized private sector and helping to build a sustainable trade network across Africa for the benefit of the Nigerian business community. NACCIMA has successfully supported private sector actors to contribute towards improving the country's economy through free enterprise, fair competition, and trade facilitation. The theme of this event, AfCFTA in Nigeria, making it work for MSMEs, is most apt. MSMEs are the bedrock of Nigeria's economy. Nigeria is home to approximately 40 million MSMEs, and their contribution to the labor market and our communities is invaluable. The African continent has taken the bold step of establishing the world's largest free trade zone through the AfCFTA. According to the United Nations Commission for Africa, UNECA, the AfCFTA has the potential to increase intra-African commerce by 52%. Countries bound by AfCFTA have a combined population of 1.2 billion people and a combined GDP of $3.4 trillion. This market is estimated to reach a GDP of $6.7 trillion by 2030 and to use its combined strength to attract some of the world's most significant foreign direct investment. This provides phenomenal opportunity for Nigerian MSMEs to scale and robustly participate in not just their local communities, but also neighboring markets. Local MSMEs who have good product and service offerings may be overlooked in Western markets, can grow across Africa. These small but growing businesses are protected by the rules of origin protocols that ensure products being traded within the AfCFTA actually emanate from Africa. This reduces competition from more industrialized economies and helps MSMEs attract sustainable investment in their areas of competitive and comparative advantage. As we are aware, a lot of work is required to make this a reality. Created the National Action Committee on AfCFTA, that's the NAC, to coordinate implementation and develop a comprehensive long-term action plan that facilitates Nigeria's participation and preparedness. I'm pleased to see that the Secretariat of the NAC is represented by its head, Mr. Francis. To prevent any omissions and deliver Nigeria's strategic objectives. NAC has also I'm sincerely sorry. May I continue from where I stopped?
Please continue, Mr. Bakri.
Okay, thank you very much. NAC has also created a results management framework that ensures we're able to obtain measurable outcomes. The frameworks for both strategy and results management are currently being evaluated by policy and regulatory bodies before being sent to the Federal Executive Council for approval. Nigeria's ambition is to become one of the world's most preferred suppliers of value-added products and services. Our strategic objective is to capture at least 10% of Africa's global imports in order to double Nigeria's export revenues by 2035. To fulfill our objective, we have built our approach around 8 pillars that are linked to the African Union's framework for increasing intra-African trade. Number 1, the first pillar on developing an institutional structure to coordinate the many entities in the public and private sectors involved in executing the AfCFTA's agreement obligations. Our aim here is to complete all national requirements so that Nigerian businesses can begin trading under AfCFTA once the relevant legal documentation is ready from the AfCFTA Secretariat. The Nigeria Customs Service has been designated as the country's competent authority for the administration of the rules of origin. Efforts are now being made to finalize the import and export processes, procedures, and forms for the administration of the AfCFTA rules of origin, and to have the legal documents gazetted so that trading can begin. The second pillar focuses on increasing our annual manufacturing capacity to $50 billion by focusing on priority value chains and developing a highly productive, skilled workforce within these areas. In Nigeria's National Development Plan, National Industrial Policy, Zero Oil Plan, and other policy documents, we have clearly outlined Nigeria's highest potential products and services for prioritization under AfCFTA. AfCFTA places emphasis on the trade of value-added products and services. It also provides opportunities for state governments to build their economies by attracting and supporting export-oriented businesses. A subnational AfCFTA initiative has been put in place to assist states to develop their own AfCFTA strategies. Our charge to the states is that they should try and create an ecosystem centered on specific products and services. We require a targeted approach to reach our goal of 1.2 billion in exports per state in 2035. Another component of this pillar is the bringing together of MSMEs in preparation for AfCFTA. This entails collaborating with aggregators and large corporations to train and integrate MSMEs into their supply chain. The third pillar is trade facilitation, which entails reducing the time and cost by simplifying, modernizing, and unifying import and export processes and procedures. It also focuses on automating the administrative and regulatory compliance processes. The fourth pillar focuses on domesticating the AfCFTA agreement by modernizing trade-related policies, regulations, and laws to correspond with the AfCFTA agreement and international best practices. Under this pillar, the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, NOTN, which also is represented by its Director General, is reviewing and updating Nigeria's trade policy. The National AfCFTA plan indicates the need to update and connect national industrial policies within the trade and investment policies. The fifth pillar is trade infrastructure, which includes energy, digital, water, and logistics infrastructure to facilitate intra-African trade. Nigeria was ranked 110th out of 160 nations in the Global Logistics Performance Index in 2020. This highlights the need for major improvement. Current issues range from the quality of trade and transportation infrastructure, ease of arranging competitively priced shipping, timeliness, and the ability to track and trace goods. The capacity to achieve efficiency and lower cargo and passenger transportation time and cost is a significant marker of improved trade competitiveness and thus an imperative for Nigeria. The sixth pillar is trade finance, and it entails establishing and strengthening financial institutions and businesses for continental commerce. It includes financing export trade, providing banking, insurance, and related services. Some of the concerns being addressed are how to de-risk lending to firms in both domestic and regional markets, how to pool funds and transactions, how to standardize credit ratings, and of course, how to extend insurance coverage for regional transactions. The seventh pillar is addressing trade information gaps. This involves providing the trade community with product and market information. Nigeria has agreed to participate in the African Trade Observatory Initiative, which will compile trade figures and other important information from all participating state parties. The eighth pillar focuses on increasing Nigerian labor mobility and market access across Africa. In terms of market access, we are taking intentional steps to bring Nigerian products and services to Africa through innovative logistics solutions, building a strong national brand, and connecting Nigerian enterprises with their African counterparts. One of the overarching goals of the ministry is to ensure the growth and development of MSMEs. And as I've illustrated, measures have been put in place to make the AfCFTA an enabling environment to achieve this. Finally, I would like to thank NACCIMA once again for putting together this commemoratory event, and more importantly, for the role they've continued to play in promoting economic integration in Nigeria and beyond. I thank you all very much for your time and your unwavering commitment to our great nation. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. On behalf of Otumba Adeniyi Adebayo, CON, Honorable Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bakrin. Please, our best wishes to the Honorable Minister. All the points he has raised is well noted. I will thank him for his leadership in this sector. We definitely would take on board the salient issues pointed out, and we'll try and see how we can factor this into the general discussion that will follow, and as well as the conclusions that we're about to reach. But please give our best wishes to him, and we are sure that he'll come back safely. Thank you very much.
Most certainly do, Your Excellency.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to also to announce that Mr. President John Udiagbala has joined us. Welcome, Mr. President.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you.
I don't know whether you would like to say a few words, just to.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, it's just a very short one. On behalf of council and members of Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, NACCIMA, I warmly welcome all of you to this webinar commemoration of the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. And let me begin by commending the NACCIMA-AfCFTA committee under the leadership of our able second deputy engineer Jani Ibrahim for organizing this webinar. Your collective effort towards ensuring the full implementation of the AfCFTA agreement is highly appreciated. Today's event, which commemorates the signing of the agreement by Nigeria, is an avenue to evaluate the implementation so far and re-strategize on the potentials to accelerate economic development in Nigeria. For this reason, the 7th of July is marked as AfCFTA Commemorative Day. As you are aware, the AfCFTA agreement is the first step in the implementation of the African Union Agenda 2063, the vision for an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa. The signing of the agreement by the President Muhammad Buhari launched Nigeria as a major supporter of a single liberalized market for trade in goods and services in Africa, connecting over 1.2 billion people. Ladies and gentlemen, let me reassure of the commitment of the association in ensuring that the market's access for Nigerian exporters of goods and services is expanded, improve competitiveness, and the ease of doing business in Africa. A platform for small and medium enterprises, SMEs, integrating into the regional economy and the acceleration of women and youth empowerment is possible through our concerted efforts. I charge us all to key into this intra-African trade that is very massive. Once again, I welcome everyone, and I wish us all fruitful deliberations and God bless. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We appreciate your kind words. We are happy with the support the Secretary is getting from this committee, and we assure you that we do justice to the webinar today. May I, before we proceed, may I quickly recognize the presence of my boss, SANCON, the leading commercial arbitrator in Africa today. Of course, and also note that Ambassador Aga, Francis Anatogu, and most of the key people are already on board. Now, under the agenda, the next item, item number 6, is the vote of thanks by Otumba Adeoye, the first Deputy President of NACCIMA. I think this vote of thanks is in respect of just to appreciate the presence of the Minister for the preliminary session before we go into the business of the day. So, Otumba Adeoye, I think you are here. Maybe you want to appreciate the Honorable Minister and some of our guests before we now proceed to item 7, which will be the real business of the day, full business of the day. Otumba Adeoye.
Before the national president, David Diagbala, leaves, I want to say thank you, MP Mugaga, for being here. I crave your indulgence. It's nice to see you, sir. Otumba Adeoye. Okay. The MP Mugaga. I think Otumba Adeoye, Secretariat.
No, sorry, Mr. Your Excellency Chairman. Otumba Adeoye said you'll be doing that at the end of the exercise so that I can give a thank you to everybody. So let's move on to the next paper. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. The next item is just introductory remarks by myself. Before we'll now try and set the ground rules for the events that will follow. So it gives me great pleasure to be invited by Engineer Jani, the chair of the AfCFTA Committee of NACCIMA, to chair this webinar. I want to thank him and thank his colleagues, Adeoye, President Diagbala, for the opportunity. The theme of this webinar is making AfCFTA work for SMEs. So we hope this platform today will enable us point the way out for critical contributions as well as enhance reasonable conclusions at the end of the event. But we all know that talk is cheap and ideas don't fly. What works is a commitment to talk, to generate ideas, and above all, implementation. The concept of an African free zone is good for the continent, such has been done in Europe and elsewhere. Every African country, and indeed every other country on the globe, ought to seize the opportunities afforded by this development. And Nigeria, more than any other country, must take the leadership position in this quest. So how do we do that? How do we take value within the new framework? Because the AfCFTA is a framework. How and what policies must our government institute to ensure we maximize the benefits of the AfCFTA? The leadership role in this matrix is to be played by the formal division of the private sector, bearing in mind that up to this moment, the informal division of the private sector has been responsible for most of the inter-African trade, albeit underdocumented. The government and the organized private sector has a duty to ensure that the appropriate policies and practical efforts to identify, develop specific products for export, created by national platforms like the business councils to develop inter-African trade, especially between Nigeria and other African countries. And in anticipation of this, the African Business Council has been established. With this, I wish to welcome and invite our experts, 6 experts and contributors for the presentation and discussions that will ensue. After their offerings, we shall have panel discussion, which will agitate the issues raised, help us wrap our arms around the key issues, make sense of them, and point out the way forward. So let's begin. The first presentation at this webinar will be made by Ambassador Yunov Aga. And Ambassador Yunov Aga maybe clearly one of the leading, if not the leading expert of international trade in Nigeria today. He had served his country meritoriously as a former ambassador to WTO and head of our office there. I was also a Deputy Director General of WTO. Presently is the Director General and Chief Trade Negotiator in the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations. Ambassador Aga will discuss the progress report on the trade negotiation under AfCFTA. I'm sure all of us will be greatly educated by his presentation. Ambassador Aga, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Prince Kayode's son. It's a pleasure to meet you on this platform after reading you all over. I thank the president and members of NACCIMA for organizing this commemorative event. Mine is mostly to give you some headlines because I have only 10 minutes. So my headlines will be mostly around an introduction, then some status of the negotiations across the different areas, and some of the elements of operationalizing the AfCFTA, and then some of the preparedness issues at the national level, and then some conclusion. So I begin by at least recalling the fact that the AfCFTA agreement entered into force on 30th May 2019, after 22 countries had deposited their instrument of ratification with the African Union Commission chairperson. as at February this year, 41 of the 54 signatories had deposited their instruments of ratification, representing 76%. To date, only Eritrea is yet to sign the AfCFTA agreement. 14 members of the African Union are also yet to ratify and deposit their instrument of ratification with the chairperson of the African Union Commission. So with that, I will now move to the negotiating areas. As you are aware, the AfCFTA is a comprehensive agreement that covers trade in goods, trade in services, investment, competition policy, intellectual property rights, women and youth in trade, and electronic commerce, as well as a mechanism for dispute settlement amongst the state parties. The negotiations have been structured into phases, with phase 1 comprising of trading goods. Can I continue? With phase 1.
Please proceed. Sorry, please proceed. Mr. Aduloju, please mute. Proceed.
With phase 1 consisting of trading goods, trading services, and dispute settlement. The elements being worked on under phase 2 are competition policy, investment, intellectual property rights, and women and youth in trade, and then electronic commerce or digital trade. In terms of trading goods, this has 9 annexes, which are being negotiated in different areas. The first issue for you to note is the market access. For market access, 46 tariff offers have been submitted to the AfCFTA Secretariat, representing 85% of the African Union membership. 29 have been verified, which includes ECOWAS, with 17 tariff offers still in the verification process. Trading documents are being finalized. They are not yet ready. I think the security imprints in the documents are going to be approved later this month by the ministers before their final production. These documents will include the rules of origin declaration form, the supplier or producer declaration, and the certificate of origin. The draft rules of origin have been finalized in accordance with Article 42 of Annex 2 of the protocol and awaits approval by the Committee of Ministers at their meeting later this month. Nigeria has designated, like as highlighted in the minister's statement, Nigeria has designated the Nigerian Customs Service as the country's competent authority for the approval and issuance of the certificate of origin. In terms of the rules of origin, it is important to note that agreement has been reached on 87.7% of the tariff lines. The outstanding issues are mainly sugar, Chapter 1702, textiles, tariff lines 5111 to 6310 are yet to be agreed. But there's a draft proposal for ministers to consider by 27th of July. We also have yet to agree on the automotive sector, where a lot of the discussions has now been deferred to national processes with consultations with the Association of African Automotive Manufacturers. So that's where we are on rules of origin. With respect to, or even trading goods, with respect to services, the idea is progressive liberalization of services with focus on 5 priority sectors: communication, business and professional services, financial services, transportation, and tourism. Negotiations have gone through the offers. 9 state parties have submitted their draft schedule of specific commitments for approval by the Committee of Ministers. It is expected that once this is approved, this will now go to the African Union heads of states for approval. The services negotiations are on an request and offer basis, and this is ongoing. Outside the offers, requests are being made, and the members, including Nigeria, are also in the process of submitting requests. I think one of the difficult things we have here are the timelines that have been approved as regards how some of these issues should be resolved, and the reality of the level of progress that is actually being made on the ground. In terms of operationalizing procedures, there is in process the issuance of ministerial directives for trade in goods, which will now allow for the application of the provisional schedules of tariff concessions. This has now been approved for the 29 member states. And I must add that ECOWAS has submitted a common schedule based on the common external tariff. The AfCFTA Secretariat is also facilitating negotiations on 10% of the tariff lines. These are the sensitive products, 7%, and the exclusion list, which consists of 3% of the tariff lines. The ministers have directed us the negotiators to fast track and complete negotiations on all outstanding issues with respect to the 5 priority services sectors. But I can say that a lot of these depend on work in the various regulatory areas around the national processes. And in Nigeria, we are happy that the government has now reconstituted the enlarged national focal point, which is an interagency process involving all ministries and departments, the private sector, including NACCIMA, MAN, and the civil society, and the academia. And we are looking at some of these issues from different perspectives as they affect the country. The services negotiations have also not been able to come up with the directive on how to operationalize the current schedules that are there. The last committee meeting has come up with a proposal that will be looked at by the senior trade officials later this month. On the other areas under phase 2, that is intellectual property, competition policy, digital trade, women and youth in trade, these are at different levels of discussion. This is because for some of them, we are even yet to agree on the terms of reference, like intellectual property. For some of them, a draft protocol has been put and is being discussed at the national level, and the committees will now take up that later at a later stage. On the other hand, we have also started conversation on the treatment of products coming out of the special economic zones, because those of you who are familiar with the protocol, with the agreement, it is inscribed that the committee of ministers will determine the treatment of these products from the special economic zones. So we have started a preliminary discussion, and I think a draft process or procedure will be put in place very soon. So to conclude, I think all that needs to be emphasized here is the idea of public policy coordination, because as you all know, all trade arrangements come with both opportunities and risks. And I believe policy coordination is key in ensuring that the risks are minimized while government support or policy reforms are put in place to maximize the benefits to the national economy. I hope that we will all take opportunity of this framework in rethinking how Nigeria approaches trade issues. And here, I think the minister I don't know whether he mentioned in his statement, has been able to get a trade policy action plan approved by government, which will take a look first at a diagnostic trade integrations strategy for Nigeria, so that we don't work in a vacuum. We work based on some coordinated approach with action to be taken by different ministries and agencies. I think we also need an aggressive sensitization strategy so that people are familiar with the different processes. And I believe the private sector itself should lead in developing the benchmarks that will help us evaluate progress and the reforms that may be required to maximize Nigeria's benefit from the AfCFTA. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aga, Ambassador Aga. For me, personally, I'm not surprised you are leading light in this sector, and your contribution very much up to point. The critical points you have raised, as noted, we will put it together later when, after all the other experts have made their presentation. I appreciate you and thank you for leadership and service. May I invite the next presenter, Mr. Francis Anatobu, the CEO of National Action Committee on the AfCFTA. He's doing the yeoman job of putting it all together. Francis, he has an MBA from Cambridge. He's worked at Accenture and Deloitte. He's worked with the presidency as advisor on public sector matters. But I think the past 2-3 years, he's actually been doing a lot of work on AfCFTA implementation in Nigeria. Mr. Francis, you're welcome. Please, the floor is yours. Happy if you can do it within 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. So my title is Secretary, National Action Committee on the AfCFTA. The committee is chaired by the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. I've got 10 minutes, like you said, and I think what the minister's speech went into details. So I think I will very quickly talk about from an implementation perspective where we are and what are the key imperatives and what areas that we must focus on. Essentially, we have a draft roadmap which shows where we are prioritizing. The committee has been set up and working, and within MDAs and associations just like NACCIMA, we have AfCFTA focal points, or in some cases AfCFTA committees like NACCIMA, Central Bank, and Customs, and a couple of other organizations. At the state level as well, 10 states have set up technical working groups trying to see how they can adapt the AfCFTA or adapt their development plans to focus on export to Africa. And a lot of sensitization has been ongoing to create awareness, but as the trading documents appear and the relevant documents become available, the focus will change a bit to provide the trading community with the specifics of how to go about trading and so on. But 2021-22, there are some specific areas that we prioritize. One is, and that is based on the 7 pillars that the Honorable Minister talked about. The first of which is developing our productive capacity, and in layman terms is what are we going to trade? So we have identified the priority products and services that we're going to trade under AfCFTA. In the agricultural area, in manufacturing, and extractives, but also in services. The other thing is that the strategy that the strategy to guide the entire implementation, which we've developed the first draft last year and sent across to the MDAs to review and provide updates. They provided updates. We've gone through a number of iterations, and come August, we'll have a technical review followed by stakeholder validation, and we hope that from that will be in a position to get this document in front of the Federal Executive Council to approve. But I think the other point to mention, and very critical, is yes, we've got this strategy document, but also we have developed a first pass monitoring and evaluation framework. It is very critical because the AfCFTA success with AfCFTA will require almost every agency of government and the private sector working together in a coherent and consistent manner, in a sequenced manner, so that we can achieve one achievement will build onto the other, and will achieve the objective of increasing our exports to Africa. So, and that's what that monitoring and evaluation framework would do. The framework the first pass framework has been developed, and the next step is gathering the baseline data and publishing the baseline performance dashboard this year. The other critical activity that has commenced is audit of our policies, regulations, and laws to ensure that they are in alignment with the provisions of AfCFTA on one hand, and to also look at other areas that we must update to enable us to export. I think it's important to note that export to Africa is just one element of the country's export program. The other thing is, I've already talked about what we are doing with the subnationals. We held a subnational workshop back in November 2021, and we are now working with the states to develop their strategies for AfCFTA. And the last part is having an effective administrative architecture for the implementation of the AfCFTA. From the schedule, from what we've seen, the AfCFTA is a marathon and will last for years. The trade in goods schedule will be the tariff dismantling for us in ECOWAS will last 10 years. So that gives you the indication of how long-term this program is. So the organization that we have we need to ensure that the AfCFTA is implemented successfully over the long term. Needs to what the structure that we'll have needs to be updated to ensure that that we are in a position to operate over the long term. There are other areas, but I've got only 10 minutes. But in a nutshell, the measure of success is really this year is making sure that we are able to implement those preferential trade process. As Ambassador Aga mentioned, the Nigerian Customs has been designated as Nigeria's competent authority for the administration of AfCFTA. Now, with that designation, I'm aware that they've started developing the processes to underpin that, and they are based on the AfCFTA ministerial directive. The next thing is to then give it the legal backing locally to ensure that, be it the rules of origin or the tariff dismantling calendar, gets the legal basis that it needs to become effective. So in a nutshell, these are all that we are pushing at the National Action Committee Secretariat. I would end by mentioning a key project focused on MSMEs, and that is our SME aggregation project. And the rationale or the basis is that SMEs themselves are the Nigerian SMEs. Yes, they are the bedrock, but they are also very, very tiny. And for them to be able to take advantage of the AfCFTA, they need some support to meet the export criteria across all the various areas. So helping them to aggregate or helping them to produce to the quality that aggregators need to export is a critical element. So even as we're working with SMEs, we will be working with aggregators to make sure that areas like rules of origin, the quality, and all other aspects that we need to cover for export to happen, all of this happen. The second point is the e-commerce project, and we're working with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Jumia to onboard SMEs to trade, to make their products visible and to trade across borders. So this has kicked off, and the training of the first cohort will happen in August, and we will take it from there. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to address you, and thank you, NACCIMA, for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis.
Hi, Ola. Hi, Hans.
Thank you very much, Francis. We appreciate your contribution, the overview you've given us about the roadmap for implementation, all the key areas, especially the priority areas and the key issues of preferential trading processes, SME aggregation, and e-commerce. This definitely flow quietly into the theme, which is how SMEs can actually be mainstream into the AfCFTA and how they will take value. We thank you for this. As I said, all these points are noted and will be taken together when we are discussing on the panel. May I now call on the third presenter, Mr. Dr. Nwebu Legosi, Advisor, Trade Policy and Business Environment. He is currently works with GIZ, Nigeria, and ECOWAS as a senior legal advisor. Dr. Nwebu is an international trade and investment law expert with considerable experience in customs and trade facilitation and negotiation. He's somebody I know very well, a very brilliant associate of mine. I'm happy to have you as an expert presenter here. Please, you have the floor.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Can we hear me?
Good morning. We can hear you very well.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and my appreciation goes to the leadership of NACCIMA for considering me to be part of this high-level discussion. Basically, my assignment is to look at the role of the private sector in AfCFTA in Nigeria. And we've also heard from the public actors what they are doing. At the central to what they've just said all is that it boils down to what the private sector can do or how the private sector is being prepared to take advantage of the AfCFTA. So to me, from the private sector perspective, looking at the role they can play is one, at the moment in Nigeria, maybe someone will also correct if I'm wrong, we do not have, or we should have, a private sector development strategy in place nationally, so that we can pay proper attention to the growth of the private sector and mainstream them into our development plans, as it were. So I think moving forward, that should be one of the first things we can do, possibly being driven by the private sector themselves to say we need a strategy that points to where we are going, and how we are going there. So I think that's also very key. The second role that the private sector is also expected in the AfCFTA is about awareness creation. Yes, at the public sector level, quite a number of ministries, departments, and agencies are aware of the AfCFTA, but the business actors, ranging from the smallholder farmer who also have a stake in the entire process, is not yet or not much aware of what the AfCFTA is all about and how that translates into benefit for him or her at the community level. And so even in the MSME space, that awareness is also not much. So it is something that the private sector need to ensure that there is more awareness around the AfCFTA. What is it and what is in it for the small businesses? The third is about capacity building for business membership organization. Business entrepreneurs are one, but when we put them into business membership organization or professional groups, they also need to know about the AfCFTA. What is the AfCFTA talking about the leather sector? What is the AfCFTA talking about the garment sector? What is the AfCFTA talking about other value chain or commodity groupings under the AfCFTA? That we have to do so that actors in each of these value chains, we see what the AfCFTA speaks to their own sector and how it can strengthen their members. Of more importance to us is looking at those business membership organization and the sector that they cover, and build their capacity in that. For instance, yes, lawyers are very knowledgeable people. They are very intelligent group of people. But if you sample the opinion of Nigerian lawyers on the AfCFTA vis-a-vis the services sector, you will find out that there will be disconnect in terms of what the AfCFTA is speaking to in terms of trading services, and how lawyers in Africa and how lawyers in Nigeria can take advantage of that space. It is something we also need to understand in terms of building capacity of professional groups or business membership organization. And then the interface between the private sector and our foreign missions is also very, very key, because it will be difficult for private sector actors to just gain market access into another country without, first of all, building a relationship or having a framework for sharing information with our trade missions abroad, so to say. And so that also needs to be connected with what the chambers of commerce are doing, so that we have a clear-cut relationship between our foreign missions and the home businesses, which is the essence why we have our trade attaches in all the embassies. And so if we are also doing some
Has he lost or dropped off, or it's just me?
Okay, am I back?
Yes, please.
Yes,
you are.
I can hear you.
Okay, and so the other issue is about export development, and so we should pay attention as to what to how we can develop our or we can boost intra-Africa trade. And so we need to develop before we promote. So that is something that the private sector also need to pay special attention to. And then the other one is about policy advocacy for business environment reforms. That is key element of what the private sector need to do under the AfCFTA. I want to advocate for the private sector, even when from the reports we are hearing some of the intervention private sector to take that lead and business environment for businesses to strive. And then finally, is on our structural transformation agenda. No matter how we try, no matter how good policies we develop, if we don't have to look at our industrial capacity in terms of adding value to the commodities or to the product, a robust, very active private sector participation in the process. And I think it is something that we need to do and do well. I didn't want to follow the conventional route of laying out all the complaints or how the problems that private sector faces, but how we can look at solutions to make things work for the entire space for us, not only in Nigeria, but also in Africa as a whole. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Legbosi. I just have a little issue. One, your last point was not clear. That should be your 6th point. Could you take it back? You were a bit not clear. The last point after we talk about export.
Okay. What I meant is that we need to have a clear-cut agenda on our structural transformation and trade under the AfCFTA or get the benefit of the AfCFTA if we don't look at our own industrial capacity in terms of what we are good at and what we can manufacture and how our manufacturing space can be strengthened so that we can get the best under the AfCFTA. And so a very clear example is about the National Industrial Revolution Plan, which has since expired. And so we don't have any other successor plan in terms of industrialization or industrial policy that speaks to our productive capacity or manufacturing capacity in that context. So I'm calling for private sector actors to pay more attention on our industrial capacity, because if we don't manufacture, and it's all about harvesting.
Thank you.
Prince, you're muted.
Hello. Yes. Yeah. Sorry, who? From where?
Prince, you're muted.
Yes.
So I was saying that you have highlighted some of the key challenges that even we within the organized private sector know, that part of our own failings, that instead of complaining all the time, we actually lead the way in discussing some of these key issues and making presentations to government, rather than waiting for government to do everything for us. So I thank you for your contribution. As I said, these issues will be agitated later. The 4th presenter is Professor Jonathan. This is a well-known figure in Nigeria and ECOWAS, and he will speak on domestication of AfCFTA in Nigeria. Professor Aremu is a professor of international economic relations and is a consultant to ECOWAS and one of the leading experts on the AfCFTA. Please, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Please, can you allow me to share my screen?
Yes, please. Secretariat, please give all the support to Dr. Aremu.
Thank you. The assignment given to me is simple. Initially, the title of this thing is after how to work for MSME. But I'm just to look at the importance of domestication, where SME occupy a very important space within the Nigeria productive sector, whether we want it or not. Quite a lot of research studies have been carried out, and you can see the result over there. Account for 96% of registered company in Nigeria, 75% of national labor force, 40% of the GDP. That is marvelous. You can see the distribution of SME across Nigeria in that Nigeria map. Also, SME, if we are going to actually ensure that after we not leave anybody behind in line with the Agenda 2020, then SME must be taken care of. So we need to develop an SME-sensitive approach into after to be able to address these people that occupy a very important sector of our domestic economy. But there are certain things that we need to do briefly before I go to my own topic. We must identify SMEs' specific barriers, those barriers that are confronting them. Number two, we must consider the main factors that have been segregating them from participating well, particularly issues of finance. Number three, we must actually look into guiding the development of SME-responsive policies in the economy. And number four, we must identify the intervention strategy to assist SME, and then assisting them to participate in trading in goods and services under AfCFTA is equally important. Then number six, we have to draw the attention of National Action Committee to SME-specific industrialization program. Last but not the least, is the issue of highlighting the need for empowering the SME so that they can do well under this continental economic integration. Now let me just go straight to the issue of importance of domestication, which is the title of my discussion. Very important. I say here that as much as possible to be able to trade under AfCFTA, there are three things that are relevant. We appreciate the president for ratifying, for signing AfCFTA 3 years ago, and then we ratify on the 5th of December. But there are three things that have to be done. Number one, signing, which was done on the 7th of July. Number two, ratifying, which was done on the 5th of December. The third leg of the tricycle is domestication. You see, a tricycle that operates on two legs cannot work. And domestication becomes the third leg that must be taken care of if we are to be able to say through. What, therefore, is a domestication? I said it is not enough to sign any international treaty. It is not enough to ratify them. It is perhaps very, very important that we have to make them to answer to the various things inside our domestic law. That is why domestication of international treaty agreement is the process of incorporating the provision of the treaty into an extant law of a country so that I can give the force in that particular country. But it is not all countries that go through this dualistic system. For some countries, once things are ratified, that is all. But by Nigeria Constitution, that is not so. Section 12 of Section 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says that no treaty between the Federal Federation and another country can have force of law except to the extent to which such treaty have been exerted in law by the National Assembly. This implies that no matter how good a particular treaty addresses Nigeria's situation, when it is not recognized by National Assembly, then it is not legally binding on the economy. In other words, all international treaties, including AfCFTA, should be subjected to domestication through National Assembly in order to allow Nigeria to benefit from them. Well, you can say, why is it necessary? It's not necessary. Well, to me, you may say that if our people can go into participating in AfCFTA, I discovered about 2 weeks ago, there's a show in Togo in which we are saying Nigerians are trading under AfCFTA. The ambassador of Nigeria was equally there. Well, the issue is this. There is no problem in trading under AfCFTA. But if you are not covered by law, in case there is trade infraction, which law will you refer to in Nigeria to cover you? And you know, under the dispute settlement system of African Continental Free Trade Area, it is state-to-state dispute that will actually resolve this matter. So for effective domestication, it's not enough to have treaties ordinarily in the legal system, but there is need to sensitize the legal practitioner on the laws as well so that they can be used when cases arise. Also, it is very important to ensure that they provide the people with informed knowledge of what the laws constitute at all levels of government, from the local government to the federal government. And each levels of governance, they are actually responsible for what actually concerns them. Also, it's important to enlist the civil society also to join such advocacy in their circles of influence. So what we are saying is that I'm happy that somebody else has talked already. And let me just refer to what Ambassador Oga said. In his closing, he said that coordination is very, very important of the policies. Also, I have the Francis, the secretary to NAC, saying that this success demands that all MDA are on the same page on the stage of the economic integration. That is to say that each of the MDAs, the law that actually guide them in their activity, must actually recognize what we are committing ourselves under AfCFTA, so that they can actually be implemented in the process of implementing African Continental Free Trade Area. So an international treaty needs corresponding national law and system to be enforceable. It is therefore mandated that a country like Nigeria should be able to identify all the treaties and protocols that is signatory to and domesticate those that will benefit Nigeria. Since not all treaties may not be beneficial, Nigeria needs, in the long run, or in the face of the current world economic reality, to be able to look at the ones that are most beneficial. I think AfCFTA is one of the ones that are most beneficial. It's one of the things which the president committed himself to. He has allowed democracy to reign, but setting up readiness and study to be able to, before he can go into this, he has equally sent one of his senior officials in the person of the secretary to the National Action Committee to be able to be in charge of this assignment. I think that we need to go ahead to ensure we perfect the third leg, which is the domestication. And it is very important that this is done speedily, because lateness to any international treaty, you can know the implication. When you are late to ratify, then that means you are going to enter in form of accession. When you are late to domestication, that means that other countries that have domesticated the treaty before you, then they will have got their trading partner before you. So this is not something which we can delay any longer. We have to move faster. So I just refer, before I finish, I will look at the provision of the Vienna Convention of Treaty Obligation. That treaty is based on pacta sunt servanda. That is to say, whatever you commit yourself into doing in international treaty, you must actually make sure that your domestic law abides. It is not permitted to say that you enter into an international treaty, but your domestic law will not. No, the principle of pacta sunt servanda stated that you are compelled to be able to do whatever you ratify. Therefore, we can no longer say it's not in our domestic law. What we need to do is to make our domestic law to be able to be in line with what we ratify. In fact, Article 27 of that Vienna Convention disallows a country from invoking the provision of its domestic law as justification for failure to perform. And this is very, very important. So failure of any country to be able to domesticate after, it will cause unnecessary hardship on other African member states, because you cannot enforce whatever you are doing in your domestic law. And in case there is a problem, the two parties may be in problem. Well, this is not only discouraging trade in goods and services as well as investment across African states, but consequently, it actually disturbs the benefits which we have been talking about on the African continental free trade area. So what are some of the challenges caused by non-domestication? Well, the challenges are quite real, as I've mentioned it earlier on, and there are some cases in international law in which the International Court of Justice actually bring up a point. And the decision was based on Article 27 of the Vienna Convention of Law of Treaties, which said that a party may not invoke the provision of its internal law as justification for failure to perform a treaty. And this was actually used in deciding a case between police and national, as well as in the case of Basin Territory. And the judgment said it should ever be observed that a state cannot adduce as against any other state its own constitution with a view of evading its obligation under international treaty. So in conclusion, in NAFTA, no single country, no matter how large, can effectively succeed independently without requiring the assistance of other nations. And it is on this premise that after framework agreement is formulated. Over the years, Nigeria has actively participated in the signing of international treaty, but we need to look further to be able to make sure that all these international agreements are domesticated, particularly this very important one on economic integration of Africa, for which Nigeria has committed its resources a lot since the founding of OAU in 1963 and the Lagos Plan of Action in 1980, and then the African Economic Community Treaty of 1991. So under AfCFTA, the failure or prolonged delays of a country in domesticating AfCFTA is not advisable, as it breaches the treaty obligations, as well as giving only crumbs. I say crumbs, the leftover on the table of AfCFTA to the country that come there next. Rather than chickening out of the treaty with the excuse of non-domestication, Nigeria can table a reservation as provided under the Vienna Convention at an appropriate time. At least some of these provisions will be open to further negotiation every 5 years, not only in NAFTA, but as well as in other obligations in international treaty. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Aremu. I really appreciate your presentation and the challenges that the delay in domestication or even failure to domesticate may cause, the uncertainty, the hardship, as well as the breach of treaty obligations, respectively, that were signed. But during the panel discussion, I will definitely challenge some of the panelists on actually the issue about interpretation of Section 12 and Section 1, which has been the authority for the assumption that an agreement like the AfCFTA really has to be passed into law. You know, because I've looked at that section, but again, I will reserve that issue until whether that section is applicable. I will reserve it until when we get to the panel discussion. So once again, I want to thank and appreciate Professor Aremu for his very erudite contribution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
The next presenter will be Dr. Femi Abimbola. She's a lead advisor to the Senior Vice President of the African Development Bank. And we are happy to have her with us. Professor Abimbola is a professor in practice, international strategy and development economist. She holds her PhD from Austin Business School and is a member of very prominent international organizations like the Royal Institute of fact, the Chatham House, let's put it like that, Academy of Management, as well as the Warwick Africa External Advisory Panel. She has huge experience in teaching, research, and dissertation in her area of specialty. We're happy to have her with us. Professor Bimbola, kindly take the mic.
Thank you very much, Prince Kayode. I first of all want to acknowledge your, if I may say so, excellent handling so far. But of course, in our normal parlance, may I also say that I am observing every protocol. I do not want to take it for granted, neither do I want to break any. So I am saying all protocol duly observed. And of course, let me also quickly reiterate what I am giving to start from, because I have the privilege of listening to everything that has been said so far. I'm therefore glad that my session is coming towards the end, because it now turns the table on the area that is crucial for NACCIMA, demand side, because most of the issue we've been addressing so far address the supply side. They are very crucial, but I have the privilege of having previous, if you like, experience of how it is done in other situations. For example, Nigeria is very adept at trying to expand our economic sector. I also must mention that this is not something new to me. I served as an NYC at NACCIMA some decades back, and I remember that we used to have the United States trade administrator coming to us, and I was responsible for dealing with them. And I'm just about to lay down why demand side is crucial, and that is what I am addressing. The US used to send their main trade administrator to us in NACCIMA, which is Kwara State Chamber of Commerce. I was serving there, and the primary thing they were asking of us was, how can we make sure that everything that is coming out of Nigeria met the international required standard? And primary thing they were requesting is not really to meet certain things they have preset. It was really more to say, if you say you are bringing us shea butter that is 100% purified, we want to see that it is 100% purified and it is not 75% purified. If you are bringing us palm oil, we want to see that it is palm oil that is really genuine palm oil. And if you say it is coming from Nigeria, it's actually Nigerian palm oil and it is not something else or coming from somewhere else. So you can see the import of demand side on things. And this is where I feel glad that what was given to me, the title was given to me, is very apt in talking about the demand side. What I am asked to speak to today is about making it work for MSMEs, making it work, making Africa Free Trade, Continental Free Trade Agreement work for the MSM. And if you need to make it work, we have to think about a number of things. Some of those things were mentioned early this morning, and I'm really glad to put those key points across. The point from what I've laid down is this: it doesn't matter how much we refine the supply side, you know, the structure, the documentation, and so on. If we do not address the demand side, it will still be there in about 20, 30 years' time. Whereas if we address demand side, while the government and institutions are addressing the supply side, when the supply side documentation, I call them documentation, not just treaties and policies, but I'm calling them documentation because they are more than policy and treaties. There are others that are frameworks, others that are strategies, and others that are policy stroke frameworks. So whatever it is, those are the documentation from the supply side. In terms of demand side, therefore, which is what is crucial to MSMEs in making sure that they are able to take advantage, competitive advantage of what the free trade agreement is offering. There are quite a number of things that are market-based. I call them market-based because it's easier for all of us, whether we are coming from economics, institutional economics, developmental economics, supply side or demand side. They are market-based because it is the basis for those who are buying, for them to make a choice. For example, if you have a car made in Nigeria and a car made in Ghana today, and you ask people to choose, even if Nigeria made in Nigeria car is the best in the world, people would think twice about certain things before they make that objective decision. Let's just imagine that the car is exactly the same, or Nigeria car is better than the Ghanaian car, but don't say to them, don't check the rule of origin, don't check the country of origin, check the quality first, and you know the quality Nigeria car is, say, better than Ghanaian car, then you reveal the rule of origin or source of origin, or then you can imagine certain things that will be coming to people's mind. They will use that to judge in whether they should buy the one that come from Nigeria or the one that come from Ghana. And that's an example of market-based or managing the demand side, which is why it is so crucial for us and NACCIMA, for example, to focus very much on demand side in guiding the MSMEs. What are those things that goes into demand side in terms of trade, whether it is trade in services, trade in consultancy, trade in products, and trade in goods, finished goods? It doesn't matter which sector we are talking about. It can be education, it can be in the car industry, it can be in agric base, it can be in agro-allied and any area. What are those things that is common to demand side? Some of them include the value addition. Why is yours different? Value addition can be very practical. It can also be perceptual, what we call perceptual, the way what people think about the value addition. And when they do that, they use certain things to connote in their mind. For example, trust. Do you trust these? If they say this university is based in Botswana or is based in Nigeria, do you trust them to provide what you think they are providing? Or if you think this palm oil is from Nigeria and is from Namibia, do you trust which one? Or if you say this particular legal establishment is based in South Africa or is based in Nigeria, do you trust which one to do whatever service you require of them? And it is that sort of trust building element that will be crucial for market entry on demand side. And the reason why demand side is very important is this: no government buys anything, no government trade in anything. No, whether they are United States government, they are British government, Outer Mongolia or Nigeria government, no. The government trade, it is individual citizens or what we call clients or customers that trades and buy these things. The government may be negotiating on their behalf, but if you have one of the perfect negotiation in the world, you have perfect policy in the world, but people who are going to make use of this do not choose. And that word is very important, choice. If they do not choose what you have, then the government will just be storing it in a warehouse, and they will change what the kind of agreement they have. So they will change which country they want to trade with. And this is where the private sector and the government actors always are very aware of this, and some of these have been mentioned in the context of that, especially by the minister's office, to say you have to address demand side, and the government is not capable. They are not designed to manage the demand side. It is really the private sector, and it is an organization, an umbrella organization such as NACCIMA that can really handle the demand side. How? I will prefer four major things. I also have to say that I have had the privilege of spending decades which is another reason why we should focus on demand side. Some of my earlier work on market access, for example, on trade and aid, for example, they are more than 13 years old. And some of the earlier discussion engagement in terms of Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement is also quite getting old now. Although we are celebrating the 3rd anniversary, the agreement itself is 5 years old. And I believe that it is Professor Aremo that mentioned the crumbs from tables if you are late to the discussion. So in that context, I want to mention 4 major things that will really speak to the role that MSME need to focus on to enhance their ability to gain from and to make competitive, if you like, entry into the market, that the opportunity the market has created. One, when you talk about legal implication, some of these legal implications speaks to bigger country to country or supply side, because trademarks and brands, and I'm glad that people like Prince Adetokunbo Kayode is here. They know that some of these arguments can really be addressed on trademark side. So if you have your trademarks in place, which is part of the process of branding yourself, then you already have some convention. It's both international convention, and there is no way that the African Free Trade Agreement can override what is already international convention, which is trademark convention, or IP, intellectual property rules. These are very well established from demand side, so it makes it easier to for competitors not to infringe on the markets you already have in the first instance, so you don't have to spend the endless amount of time to fight the war. The first, and don't let anybody raise a war against you. So if they know, because for example, if you want to copy Guinness now, you are limited in how much you want to copy Guinness, but those things were started, even though they may be hundreds of years ago, but a journey of 1,000 years starts with a single step. So that's the kind of demand side that we all should be addressing. How to make sure that what choice is made, our products, services, offerings is the choice, is the preferred choice in the market, and we are already putting elements of trust, or using things to build elements of trust, things upon which perception, understanding of what they think we can do can be built. There is also the collaboration. As you know, trust is very low in our country. It's extremely low. And so trust is also low in some of the things we put outside. How do I trust that when I'm trading with you on this is there? So the element of trust, collaboration is the beginning of building trust. For example, if there's no trust at the national level, if there's trust within members of NACCIMA one way or the other, and for you to build trust, there must be consequence management. So that if there's an infringement, if you say your car is can run 100 miles per hour on electric, and then you discover that it can only be 50 miles, then you've already disappointed your customer or your client. So choice making is very difficult. So this is what and I'm using that as a high level. At the basic level, ordinary food items, ordinary clothing, or whatever the lower, if you like, immediate consumption activities that MSM do produce, you really need collaboration. So it is creating a venue for collaboration, and you cannot create collaboration where there is no verification. How do you know that what you are claiming to be the content of this particular item is actually the content? So verification, for example, I do know very much for that we have the Institute of National Institute of product quality somewhere in Oshodi in those days. I'm sure they've moved it from Oshodi. I'm talking about 40 years ago now. But the idea is that every content, and NACCIMA must have a way of being able to sensitize their member to make sure that what you say is in something is actually what is there. And that is in addition to NAFDAC. Remember, NAFDAC is the quality assurance area of things, but that will also be a third issue for MSM to address. And because my time is fast spent, I have just about 2 minutes more. Ability to track and trace you can see what is happening with COVID, which is a very good, or Ebola, for example, and there are so many other things that are not as bad as that. Ability to trace, to track and trace is crucial. Where is it coming from? Even if you say it is coming from Nigeria, if it gets to Nigeria, will you be able to say it is coming from Inewi, or it is coming from Shaki, or it is coming from Badagry, or it is coming from Yola within the national level? Those things you cannot leave to supply side, the demand side, because when it comes to it, if somebody is going to sue someone for something, again, the lawyers will tell you, you that put it in the market, you'll be responsible for the bad side. So therefore, for the demand stimulation to work, it is MSM you have to focus on. It doesn't matter how small they are. You cannot see any country. There is no country in anywhere in the world where they have bigger companies than MSMs. Most of the countries have the smallest you can get are those in Africa, but many developed countries, what makes them what they are is really because they have a flourishing MSM sector. So that is also why it is crucial. Finally, I want to mention AGOA. AGOA is an agreement, I'm sure quite a number of NACCIMA's members will know AGOA, to see why it didn't work for Nigeria. So we should learn from that, why we should simply go back and see why AGOA did not work for Nigeria, to know that as we are celebrating or commemorating the 3rd anniversary, if we do not focus on demand side, it is likely to go in that direction where we have so many documentation, we have so many policies, we have so many declarations, while others who have focused on demand side are beginning to gain the reward of doing so. We will just be amassing administrative, if you like, bureaucratic documentation that may not necessarily stimulate nor create the vibrant private sector we all hope for. I will want to stop there if you permit me to do so. I'm just about some seconds over my 10 minutes. I do appreciate the opportunity, and I'm very grateful to NACCIMA for the opportunity to be able to join you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Abimbola, for bringing out clearly the other side of this divide. The demand side, which relates to actually compliance, standard, traceability, and of course the issue of branding and stuff. These are very critical issues, and again, this is an area where the private sector, the organized private sector like NACCIMA, can play a leadership role, of course, working with government, the Just Standards Organization, NAFDAC, and the Federal Competition, and all these other agencies that are available. Many of them, NACCIMA has, and other members of OPS have representative on the board of most of these organizations, and we need to provide leadership in it. And this is the point you have made so very eloquently. And of course, another issue which I would like the panel to talk about later will be issue of non-compliance and dispute resolution. How do you go about making this work without going through our court system? All over the world, the courts are bogged down. So it's nothing special to us. What they've done is to allow ADR to do more of commercial business. So having said that, I want to appreciate Professor Abimbola for her very brilliant presentation. I hope that this is the beginning of a very strong and robust relationship with NACCIMA. Please rest assured that some of the points you have taken today will provide a platform for you to come and elucidate further in the very near future. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate your kindness.
The next presenter is Dr. Derek Omoli. Dr. Derek has over 15% industrial experience in banking and foreign direct investment. He heads the SME Secretariat, an organization whose focus is economic development within the SME sector. His topic will be economic, industrial, and technology transformation model in driving AfCFTA. Sorry, I'll take that again. Economic, industrial, and technology transformation model in driving AfCFTA strategy with 6 billion private sector, 6 billion private sector and economic stimulus bond. Dr. Omole, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. All distinguished excellencies, good morning. Okay, so it's still morning, so I can say good morning. And I express my immense appreciation for the privilege to have this presentation. I also thank the two professors who have also started talking more about the demand side. And my presentation now will dig deeper into the demand side. Can you help me so I can share my screen? Is it possible?
Secretariat, please.
It's muted.
Okay. Please accept greetings from the board as chaired by Professor Patrick Tomi. So our focus is on an economic model we created, we developed. It's called the Economic, Industrial, and Technology Transformation Model in driving AfCFTA strategy with a $6 billion private sector CSR economic stimulus bond. So what we did sometimes in 2012, 2013, 2014 was to create this model that seeks to calibrate the bedrocks of fiscal, monetary, and social development factors so that we can be able to bring about economic development. And we did this in partnership with the organized private sector, MAN, NACCIMA, as well as NECA. The three key pillars or levers of the model is private sector bailout, government budget financing, and massive industrial intervention. Of course, the model is divided into sovereign operations and non-sovereign operations. I won't dwell too much on the economic, industrial, and technology, but let's have a look at some critical gaps affecting AfCFTA. I know some speakers have mentioned some of them, but this is how we have summarized them. To say that trade inhibitors, lack of firm reforms, then there's also poor cohesion of organized private sector development. We have lack of trade infrastructure planning, and then low government partnership. Okay, so these are real issues that needs to be addressed. I'm aware that some of them have been discussed or mentioned by some keynote speakers, but as it were, I'm happy that we have someone like Francis, who is the executive secretary of the programs in the AfCFTA, secretary as well. Let me progress. Now, what are some of the trade issues and statement of the problem? Eliminating the mess or resetting the trade system, which means that we need to conduct some trade process vaccination. If possible, flush the undesirable system of operation and model and bring in an anti-corruption model that works. That will be more of a PPP with the government. Now, what are some of our proposed strategies? Stop trade inhibitors with reforms, finance trade correctors with global funds, implement trade infrastructure planning, government to provide all necessary technical support, clusterize SMEs and upscale SMEs to PLCs, triple Nigeria's export, and this will be, benefit to all stakeholders. Now, what is the model all about in terms of the fund we have created? I mean, what's the whole idea? Now, AfCFTA in itself, has brought opportunity to Nigeria and Africa at large. But how well can we truly, practically get the best out of the AfCFTA? And so we created this bond. It's a serious economic stimulus bond. It's a collection of private sector and public sector bonds submitted into a pool that is meant to support regional development and enhancement of private sector participation, of course, in the economic development process. The whole idea is for both, multilateral institutions, private sector companies, and that's why we are already working in partnership with the three main organs of the organized private sector, NACCIMA, NECA, and MAN, to see how we can be able to work, effectively and efficiently, to pull this bond and then use it to develop, areas that have to do with trade infrastructure deficit that are glaring in our faces day and night. Now, we already have a commitment of a $1 billion fund from our European Union investment agency groups, and we're looking forward to increase the pool through partnerships among key multilateral partners. Now, the contributors and uses of the economic stimulus fund. I already mentioned that multilateral institutions will be involved, private sector companies, of course, across the sectors, whether in agri, in oil and gas, in power, in banking, and what have you, will have, to make contributions to this CSR fund. That's the idea of the fund. Okay, we can talk a little bit about the objectives. I think I highlighted a little bit, to give opportunity to private sector to contribute to real national sustainable development. So I'll share with you an experience. If you live around the Lekki area, I'd like to share that story. In fact, when we're doing a presentation of the model to the National Economic Team in Abuja, we have to mention it. That somewhere in Lekki, you have the company called Chevron. Now, Chevron saw a certain road that wasn't good, and they wanted to, bring funds to develop that road. But behold, look at what they said. The people who are, they call them monile. They mentioned that Chevron should hand the money over to them, and that they will use the money for the road. But of course, that was a fraud. They never intended, and of course, Chevron will not give them such kind of money. So, and of course, Chevron backed out from that development. So what we are saying now is that somehow private sector must be able to hold the bull by the horn. To say, yes, we want to contribute, to economic development and economic growth, and of course, to community development. And it has to be, a practical approach this time around. So how do we intend to achieve some of these ideals? Of course, in partnership with the government, we have to promote a new executive order on CSR. We really need to look at this. And then also promote a new executive order on economic security. It's important that we're able to practically hold the bull by the horn to say, okay, we want change. And yes, I hear a lot of discussions on, strategy. And like my senior colleague had mentioned just before my own lecture, you can see the failure of AGOA. And we hope that the AfCFTA will not swing into that direction. But if we will, make the AfCFTA, a giant solution for Nigeria, then we must begin to go into action planning and implementation. At a local level, the CSR economic stimulus bond will address, of course, important things like intellectual impact, youth empowerment, digitization, resource management, mines and steel, creative design, business development, and SME training. So we'll be wondering, why are we looking at it from that angle? Now, the economic model, when we developed it, we realized that the only way we can be able to achieve, real development is by identifying the sectors. So when we presented the government told us to focus on 6 key sectors. So you have power, mines and steel, gas, digital economy, petroleum resources, and agriculture. So we have now been able to tweak that implementation around that, format. And of course, the fund will also support a social and environmental impact, concern of roads, like the example I gave now on the Chevron CSR initiative, which did not succeed. And we have this kind of problems across Lagos and perhaps in other, parts of, Nigeria. Now, there's an operational process in stopping trade inhibitors. We are applying a 7-stage process. First, to identify the project, examine its test of feasibility and its test of viability, conduct evaluation, and then, of course, do the EIA and what have you. Then the 3rd stage is public-private partnership. Ensure that there's a seamless arrangement in terms of PPP with government. Effective documentation. I'm sure some of us know what we call the ICRC, Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. That is supposed to be the powerhouse, as it were, a great support structure for private sector, but sometimes you go to their office in Abuja and you keep wondering what is happening. Many projects that are supposed to kick off have not kicked off. Now, of course, to go to disbursement and then implementation and of course, regular review. Of course, we have identified technical partners, like of course the NACCIMA-AfCFTA, African Union, World Bank, the AFC, International Finance Corporation, the ADB, and we started talking to these institutions to see how we can achieve the goal. Afrexim, CBN, the Ministry of Finance, Deloitte, and of course the Nigerian Organized Private Sector. Let's quickly have a look at this chart. Now, Professor Tenny had mentioned that when we talk about resources or resource development, we will still, drive it down to citizens. But before we go to citizen approach, let's look at, the potential of the trade or market that we have as a nation. We just look at perhaps just 5 key sectors. Now, in mines and steel, we have perhaps over $50 billion resource valuation. So what's the challenge that we cannot be able, to begin to create value chain manufacturing in the mines and steel sector? I met, the Minister of Mines and Steel. We discussed, we did presentation, and the reality is that Nigeria has these resources. But how can we be able to create a positive impact? Of course, there must be reform, a strong political will, and funding. So you see where ICRC, government, penetration, and willingness to act is very important. And of course, the trade impact is humongous because you increase, of course, export and then have something good for local consumption. Oil and gas too, we have the resource, over $100 billion resource valuation, but is there political will? Because I remember we gave about 15 to 20 organizations, we call them offers to finance, their refineries. Sometimes between 2013 to 2017 or 18. But these people cannot finance this, cannot provide the guarantees that we are required to, release funding, for their projects. So these are problems that we have, which we will not just talk and go. We must be able to sit down and say, what are the projects we have on the ground? How can we get them to move? The same thing applies to agriculture. Over $50 billion resource valuation. Of course, there's need for access to capital. I mean, somebody may say, Derek, we have central bank intervention. We have infrastructure, there's one, around BI and some other kind of intervention, agri intervention. But the reality is, who are the persons who are benefiting? I hardly see. In fact, my chairman was on television and he was saying he has been hearing this thing. He has a farm project in Benin, but he has not got any approval from CBN or anybody to come and fund it. So it's more like everybody is talking from his office, but nothing is really happening. And that is what has contributed to wide-scale poverty in the nation. Of course, we have great resources in tourism, and of course, in so 3 years after AfCFTA, where is Nigeria? You will likely heard Professor Tenny mention something like that. So where are we? We will just continue talking, strategy. Now let's look at the citizen approach. Nigeria's population index to trade. Now, perhaps 15 million citizens, in the bracket of students, they're probably jobless. What is their contribution to trade? Zero. What is their contribution to tax? Zero. And many of them have no strike at the moment. So you see, these are critical issues. Okay, another 15 million citizens, how do they survive? Day-to-day struggle. If they don't sell pure water on the road, on the street, if they don't sell something, they cannot be able to earn. So what is their contribution to trade? Perhaps just 5%. All right. Now, and then contribution to tax, 5%. 50 million citizens, what happens? What's the valuation? Struggle to own and manage and sustain a business. Those are the people you see struggling maybe in BI, in Keja, they have a small office, and then they see what they can contribute. Some of them are involved in perhaps export, consultation, and what have you. Perhaps they contribute that 5%. Now, another 30 million citizens, they struggle to work in civil service or in a company. Like you see corporations around the country, maybe 15% employees and 15% contribution to tax. And of course, perhaps about 30 million citizens, hopefully, within the range of middle class and elites, for the 5% of of course, are entrepreneurs, and they are the largest contributor to trade, and of course, tax. So the reason why they are high is because they probably have connections or access to funding. At the end of the day, my friends here and distinguished excellencies, at the end of the day, the point is, do we have the capital to run these projects? In order to get at least 100 million population to engage in the mega trade, we need to plug the huge deficit of trade infrastructure, which is over $50 billion. This is the trade problem of Nigeria, not essentially strategy. Now, I hear, of course, very great points when it comes to IP, intellectual property, and of course, issues of non-compliance when it comes to trade facilitation, and of course, dispute resolution. These are key factors that must also be looked at. I mean, there are several projects that can be done, but it's just a diagram of, some projects that are key. In Lagos, you need a 4 million bridge, and then we need raw material development zone per state, localization of raw materials. And I also want to thank Francis for the report he gave. He told us about 10 states have set up technical working groups and need to be able to engage them and understand what are those technical groups doing. Have they got access to funding? Have they got land? Can they be able to start work? We need to get work. This is the situation we find ourselves in the nation. Those days when we had, some people in the past, Dr. Ebelo Beku, we had them and so many great people in OPS. We knew the force that they brought, when it comes to OPS. And so we need to begin to look at how OPS can re-engineer, its powers and capacity and begin to solve problems. We are open to wide partnerships and ready to work with our stakeholders, especially in the realization of the private sector CSR economic stimulus bond. Of course, this is the end. Perhaps maybe there are questions later on. I will be available to discuss it further. So that is the end, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Molem, for your presentation. I hope you will be remain with us because you've raised a lot of issues, and I'm sure some people would like to ask questions. I would like myself to engage with you further, especially as to how do we solve the challenges you have highlighted. Because, at the beginning of my introduction, I had said made this statement that talk alone is cheap and ideas don't fly. What works is the commitment to talk, to generate ideas, and above all, implementation. So we would like to take, I know the time is limited for you, but during the panel discussion, which will start almost immediately, we would like you to join us and see how we can find solutions to the issues you have raised. Having said all this, I want to, finally, I want to, we have a final presenter, and that person is the CEO of Nigeria Export Promotion Council, Dr. Yakusak. Dr. Yakusak has over 30 years experience in export promotion. He is key developer of the Zero Oil Plan, and we are happy to have him with us. He's ably represented by Mr. Akintunde Folorunso, who is the director in NAPC. Please make your presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. And I really want to stand on the existing protocol. I want to start by first expressing the appreciation of the ED CEO, Dr. Esther Yakusak, for being invited to speak at this particular forum. At the same time, express his regret for not being able to attend because of some other equally important programs elsewhere. And we are to talk on how to prepare MSME for export markets, for SMEs for export in AfCFTA. But we'll be able to call the topic to say preparing MSMEs for exports in AfCFTA. as a government agency, we have to be seen to be working on what we are doing in this respect. And we are not only preparing them for AfCFTA market alone, we also preparing them for the global markets. And NAPC, as we all know, is a government agency that has the sole responsibility to promote development and application of Nigerian exports, to assist in promoting the development of export-related industries, and to spearhead the creation of appropriate export incentives for exporters or SME exporters in this regard. Now, I just quickly want to refer to what we did earlier this year when we had the National Conference on Non-Oil Exports. And the essence of that conference is for us to advocate for SMEs on issues that has to do with export, because there's been a lot of distress calls from exporters, SME exporters this time around, on some policies of some government agencies. And what we did was to invite them, for them to be able to hit the nail on the head, to talk on issues that are affecting them. And issues like the CBN RT200 FX foreign exchange program was discussed. The issue of port congestion, multiple taxes, regulation of export processes and procedures. So all government agencies that are in charge of all those items that are listed were invited, and we been able to advocate for them on how to reverse all those issues as it affects our SME exporters. Another thing we'll be doing in conjunction with the ASCF Secretariat is that we'll be sensitizing our SMEs on AfCFTA. We've been able to move around the country. We've been in Akure, we've been in Ado-Ekiti, Asaba, Lagos, Aba, Owerri, Sokoto, Ibadan, Calabar, trying to sensitize performing SMEs on how to operate within the AfCFTA agreement. Another thing we have also done is to build a capacity on market access programs, and we moved around just like we did on the AfCFTA, to move around the country to build the capacities of our SME exporters on how to access the export markets. And we have a very important tool that we're using out of our collaboration with Center for the Promotion of Imports from Developing Countries. We have a tool that is globally accepted for building the capacity of SMEs to operate in any. It's a globally benchmark tool, and we'll be deploying it throughout the countries with SMEs for them to be able to operate in any export market they find themselves. Another program we'll be doing as a council, because we understand the importance of certification in exports. We have voluntary certification, we have involuntary certification. The voluntary ones are the ones that are given by SON, by NAFDAC, but we also know that there are some other certifications that are required in the international markets that we had extra value to whatever is being exported. And because of that, we've been able to build the capacity of almost 5,000 MSMEs on how to acquire bureau certification from ALAL, from ISO, from FDA, with HACCP. And we didn't only stop there, we've been able to assist, to facilitate close to 50 SMEs to acquire the HACCP certificate. And one important news also is that for the first time in Nigeria, we'll be able to get the first organic honey certification for one of our SMEs, that's the Kendake honey. So all these things we are doing to prepare SMEs for the AfCFTA markets and also the other international export markets. Now, one particular thing we also see as very important as a council is the opening of export trade houses, in Africa. And we've been able to open a particular export house in Sadat City in Cairo. And the essence of this is to enhance the visibility of made in Nigeria products in that region, and to facilitate trade of made in Nigeria products in foreign locations. So we're able to open one of those houses in Sadat City in Cairo. And we also launched another one in Lomé, Togo, in collaboration with a Man Export Group, MANEG. And all this is to prepare for the AfCFTA market. Now, one good thing the council has already been able to do through the assistance of the federal government is the provision of the 50 billion export expansion facility grants to exporters, either as COVID-19 relief package or as an export development fund. I'm glad to tell you here that about 281 companies have given were beneficiaries of huge amount of money under the COVID grant relief. And the essence of this is for them to be able to make for the losses that was the losses they suffered when we had the COVID-19 pandemic in 2019 to 2020. And not only that, also build the production capacity in preparation for whatever markets they want to venture into. So 281 companies were able to gain, big time companies were able to gain grants under the COVID relief grant. Also, we also have what we call the Export Development Fund. This fund is to assist exporters on issues that have to do with provision of their training, to expose them to trade participation and trade missions, and so to gather trade information and intelligence and provision of logistics support. As I'm saying now, about 1,250 successful SMEs have been able to access the Export Development Fund. And the tune is about 6.9 billion naira. So with this fund, we believe that SMEs in the export sector will be able to increase their capacity, get relevant market information, and be able to prepare themselves for whatever market they want to venture into. My other thing we've been able, the statutory function of the council also has to do with the deployment of the export expansion grant. And presently, the federal government has been able to approve 375 billion, to pay the backlog of 2007 to 2020 EEG claims of SMEs that have been able to repatriate their funds. So that's a very good news for exporters. 375 billion is a whooping sum, and we believe it's going to make for whatever losses they must have been incurred, or the cost of doing business in Nigeria, which we believe is not sometimes competitive. Another thing we'll be able to do, because I said the other time that when we had the national conference, one of the reasons behind it was because of the port congestion. And with that in mind, we don't believe that it is going to be, a better initiative to have what we call the domestic export warehouses. And we'll be able to have about 9 of them aggregated licenses. And the essence of this domestic export warehouse is to be able to make way for use that has to do with distribution issues and logistics and access to ports. There are cases whereby our SME exporters have to burn their fingers because of the conjunctions between Oshodi and Apapa. A particular company from Ondo State, Cocoa Production Oluju, had a whole container of shea butter melted, because of their inability to access the ports. We now believe as a council, if we have bonded warehouses, all operations that has to be done in the port will be done there, and to make way for exporters to have easy access to the cargoes that to the cargoes. So we'll be able to get export warehouse in Kaduna. We are able to get in Rivers State. We'll be able to get in Kano, in Edo State, in Lagos, in Kogi. We have 2 in Kogi, and we have 2 in Lagos State. There's one S Libra in Ikorodu, as a TCL cargo in Apapa, Lagos. So other intervention will be given to our SMEs has to do with taking them to trade fair, to participate in trade fair. And the essence of this is for them to be able to showcase their products for market expansion, and to compare what they are doing with their counterparts in some other countries. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just been able to tell us what we have been doing as a council to prepare our SMEs for the export market and AfCFTA in particular. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the presenter, Mr. Folorunso. We appreciate your presentation. You have raised several issues. You know that the matter that involves AfCFTA and SMEs, you will be, when I say you, I mean NEPC really must take a front row, because you are the agency authorized by government to promote exports in Nigeria. And many of us in the organized private sector are convinced that You cannot promote export without developing for export. And this is a point that Professor Abimbola made. You understand? You have to develop for export. We are aware that government has put in place, identified some products for export, and we need to work with you as organized private sector to basically develop this. The issue of, it even goes beyond standards. It starts from the issue of traceability. I think again, this is a point that Dr. Abimbola made. Traceability, source, the origin, how it works like that. So we, some of these issues we will raise and try to get some contribution on it, on the panel discussion. We will be grateful if you remain, so because you could be able to make the intervention. The whole essence for all of us to learn, discuss the issues, come to some conclusions, and decide how and the role that we as organized private sector can play in assisting and supporting government with suggestions on policy and practical ways to really get things going under the AfCFTA to the benefits and edification of the SMEs in Nigeria. So I thank you very much for the contribution. And I want to thank all of us. Right now, we are 59 participants still on the platform. We're expecting more to join. We hope you all remain together. We're about now to proceed to the panel discussion. It will be a very business-like panel discussion. We'll take specific issues, and members, the audience, participants who are interested, kindly indicate by just raising your hand under the chat box. You click the chat box, you see where you can raise your hand there, I think. Yes, you see where you can raise. 1 second, let me see. See where you can raise your hand. Yeah, very good. So, depends on your system, where you can raise your hand, and please do that. I will keep an eye on it. Secretariat also assist me to identify those who have raised their hands quietly so that I can recognize them and get them to contribute. Thank you very much. The panel discussion is made up of 4 very eminent Nigerians and experts in this area. The first is the Ambassador Ayola Olukoni, the former Director General of NACCIMA, former Ambassador of Nigeria to Australia and several other jurisdictions, a quintessential diplomat and a trade, call him a trade diplomat because he very, very passionate about this. Sir, you're welcome. We appreciate your presence. You'll be here from the beginning. I'm sure your leadership and contribution will be appreciated. The second panelist is Haja Aisha Abubakar, a very senior lawyer, former minister, and the current former Minister of Trade, and the current chairperson of NAWOC, which is the Women in Business under the NACCIMA platform. The third contributor is Dr. Ken Ikoha, President, National Association of Nigerian Traders, a very dogged fighter for the rights of traders in Nigeria and the business and the organized private sector generally. Is always very interesting to have him around. Thank you for being here today. And finally, definitely not the least, the fourth presenter is Yalode Alaba Lawson, past president of NACCIMA, the doyen of organized private sector in Nigeria. Well, thank you, Ma, for being here. And thank you for the efforts you have made in the past and you're going to make for the development of organized private sector in Nigeria. Now, so now that we have our panel, I will want to start with, not in any particular order, but since it's always easy to start from the top and from the first, I'll start with Ambassador Olukoni. What One of the presenters made a point about the importance of developing trade diplomacy, interaction with our missions, creating binational business councils. Do you agree with him that this is very critical for development of opportunities for MSMEs within the framework of AfCFTA? And how do we proceed to use this to maximize the opportunities that can be created?
Thank you, sir. I crave your indulgence because as you were speaking, Iyalode came on, and I can see that when you ask for people to put on their hands, she also raised her hands. I will answer that question in the affirmative and I'll speak a little bit more on it. But I crave your indulgence, sir. If you don't have any serious objection, perhaps I can just yield this time to Iyalode so that she can speak to us, because it looks like maybe perhaps she's going somewhere. But if you don't have any serious objections, sir, I crave your indulgence, sir, because the moment you ask, she put up.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador. Okay, I will ask Iyalode to proceed to speak. Even though I have a question for her, but maybe, as I said, the way she's dressed, she looks like she has a function.
Yes,
a function. So,
my national vice
proceed.
president, I am in New York for the investiture of the 14th president of UOSIMA. In fact, the national president is here with me, but I came out just to deliver my own opinion. Thank you so much for noticing that. Can I go on?
Yes, I presume you have the floor, sir, ma'am.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Your Excellencies and Alhaji Jani Ibrahim, the second deputy president of NACCIMA, the chairman of the occasion, Prince Adetokunbo Kayode San, the national vice president of NACCIMA, and of course, the former DG, Ambassador Ayola Olukoni. And let me now stand on existing protocol. I want to commend NACCIMA, the organizers of this forum, that we now have to educate all our people on the importance of AfCFTA. The timing is very apt, very, very apt. And I want to say that NACCIMA was the mover of AfCFTA when it came out that AfCFTA is the only way out to pull us out of the poverty in this continent and of course our country, Nigeria. AfCFTA seeks to provide a single market for goods, services, and free movement of good persons. The NEPC director has given us enough, and what they have been doing to move us across even the West Africa and other Africa to make sure AfCFTA succeeds. So we are talking about 1.3 billion people in a single market with about a combined GDP, gross domestic product, of about 3.4 trillion US dollars. So definitely we know that is huge. Then UNECA has then estimated after that it will double intra-trade from 12% to 25%. World Bank also estimated that 100 million will be lifted out of poverty if AfCFTA will be properly monitored, and also we have to have active involvement. Nigeria must have opportunities to tap from active involvement of the AfCFTA. If the right, I'm going to repeat it again, if the right framework and structures are put in place and put strict monitoring and evaluation procedures to be properly set. With that one, we are going to be on top. Are you talking about our population, which is over 200 million? of which 65% of it is youth. That means we are going to gain a lot from it. All we need to do is to have the will, political will, and even the private sector will to drive that economy. And so I want to say that another area we must now to look into at this stage is a single currency, so that I don't have to export my goods to Ghana and be looking for how I'm going to change it into cedis, or into South Africa, I'm going to be looking for into rands. All this, we must look for a single currency like Europe when they introduce euro. That doesn't disturb dollar. It doesn't disturb the pounds in England. So we need to have that strong will to introduce the single currency that we can use within Africa, that we don't need to be looking for exchange into from one currency to the other. So I am grateful for giving me this opportunity. And like the chairman already noticed, I am in Uyo, Akwa Ibom, for the investiture of Chief Mrs. Afi Israeli Banga as the 14th president of Uyo Chambers of Commerce. So I thank you so much. And I want to say, have a nice deliberation. God bless us all. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for giving me this opportunity. I am done. Back to you, Mr. Chairman, sir.
Thank you, our revered, distinguished Yalode. Honestly, MFI, JP, IOD, thank you very much. It's nice, really nice to see you, man. It looks like our chairman dropped off a bit.
We are working together as a team.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I think he's back. I think the chair is back.
Yes, you can have the floor, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
The chair seems to be having some technical issues. Well, while he comes back and I still have the floor, maybe perhaps I can continue to make my small little remarks. And it's my small little remarks. Okay, he's back. Okay, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yalode for our contribution. Okay. I think technology has served us for about 2.5 hours. It's getting a bit weary. We'll try and move quickly. I had wanted to ask Yalode about how should the OPS proceed beyond words. We know the advantage of the AfCFTA reeled out statistics that shows that if we do these things well, we will stand to gain a lot, especially through the SMEs. Now, how should we proceed beyond words to stretch a hand to do two things? One, to support SMEs so that they can key into the framework. Two, to assist government. Because from what I've seen over these years, government always needs a lot of assistance to do certain things. I've looked at the presentation of everybody, both Professor Abimbola, Professor Aremu. You find out that we need, as organized by to find a way to assist government. We should not assume that they do everything because they don't. So, Mama, if you can just very quickly talk about this, so I can now go to.
Yes, the way we can help the SMEs is to ensure that they have single digits of credit. The money they are taking now as loan is too much on the interest rates. We have to look into that and make sure the MSMEs have single digit loan. Even there are so many funds in central bank for this, but it is very difficult to access. So we must look into this. That is number one. Number two, we need to tell the policy makers there is different from theory and there is different in practical, but they work together. If they want to make any policy, they have to carry the organized private sector along. I could remember during the time of late Chief Adeyemi Lawson, Henry Fajemi Rokun, and others, what we experienced was that at the second quarter, they will call all the organized private sector to the villa by the government. They will ask them, what do you want us? How have you fared? What do you want us to put into the budget? How have you been faring? What do you want as policy? Because they are giving the policies, but the organized private sectors are the stakeholders that are using the policy. So they know better. So it is what the organized private sector must have given on to the government. They will now rub minds together to put together, because that will make the economy to grow. Then in the first quarter of a new year, but one thing is that the budget must come out at the first week of the new year, so that everybody knows where you want to key in to make your own input into the growth of the economy. And now, at the first quarter, they will now call them back again to the villa and say, how far has our policy been able to be managed by you, the organized private sector? I think we need to go back to the scoreboard and then let them know that this is the only way, working together as a team with the policy maker and the people that are using the policy to make sure things are working well. We work together as a team. So for now, I think for AfCFTA to move, organized private sector to must be in action. We cannot sit on the fence. We have to put action into it. Those are the hem of affairs. Should please put in action. Action is the word I will use. When we put action and they know we are serious, all these funds lying down at central bank not being used because we cannot access them. All things they are putting there is putting it, what I would say, things that are very difficult. It's not easy. They will say it's there, but it's not easy to access. Let them bring it out into the table and let it be assessed. And then we can help our people in MSMEs and other junior ones. MSMEs is the bedrock of any economy to help the GDP. So we need to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
So the point which Yalo clearly made was that there has to be a more interactive collaboration with government. Of course, we have to be prepared for that. But a more interactive collaboration with government, so that we can make input into every aspect of what is going on. And I can tell you, she's very right in this, because there are many things that I had here today from many of the presenters, Francis, Ambassador Aga, that I'm just hearing for the first time. And that is a bit burdensome. Good ideas, but there's need for input by the private sector. Very interactive one. Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador. I'll come back to Ambassador Olukoni. I was talking about collaboration with our missions, creating binational councils or platforms for doing business. Now, what is the basis of this? You know that AfCFTA is a framework, but countries have to trade with countries within, that is, Nigerians have to trade with Kenyans within the framework of the AfCFTA. But it is Nigerians trading with Kenyans. It is Nigerians trading with Ugandans. So you see, there's need for, it appears there's need for this binational organization that will work, that will enhance the overall impact of the AfCFTA. How do you think that the OPS and Nigerian foreign sector, the foreign missions and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other international bodies can work together to enable us to achieve this?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank NACCIMA for inviting me to be back. I'm currently outside the country, and I've been up for the past 4 hours. This is a reflection of how much I think this forum is very important. But before we continue, I'd simply like to say that as we mark 3 years of our signing of the AfCFTA, it also reminds of the role which our late colleague, Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, played in the whole process of the AfCFTA. He played a very key important role. And I remember the famous picture when our president was signing, Ambassador Chiedu was behind him, great ear. It was towards the end of his final years. We played a very key and very important role. And I think we are not only marking 3 years of AfCFTA, we're also remembering what a prosperous Nigerian did in terms of the finale of the AfCFTA. Ironically, Ambassador Chiedu passed away a few months after that. And we remember him, and of course, we know that his memory endures in all of us as far as this is concerned. Now, the key issue which you raised, of course, is very important. I, as a former Nigerian diplomat, 33 years, almost 35 years Nigerian diplomat, also had the opportunity to cross over to the private sector, to serve as Director General NACCIMA. So I could see the two sides, looking at things from outside as far as potentials of Nigeria. And of course, also the importance of the Nigerian diplomatic mission is key, it's very important. The whole essence of the Joint Commission and Binational Commission is to put into a framework and provide a framework for discussion and negotiations between the two sides. Even as we say that the AfCFTA is a private sector organization, is a private sector event which will be organized by the private sector, the BNCs and the joint commissions will still, one way or the other, play key and very important role. And I'm saying that, like I said, as a former diplomat and also eventually ambassador to Australia. And I'll give a good example. When the Australian started inviting us, I'm talking about the extractive industries now, as far as the two of us are concerned. While we identified and want to work and bring in the Australian investors, there was a question and issue of the relationship between us and Australia. And so we eventually, and I was one of those people who pushed for that, we have an agreement between Nigeria and Australia in the area of mining, agri, energy, and financial sector. So this is the context of what we're talking about as far as the importance of all of these issues which we're talking about is concerned. But before I leave, I should take the opportunity to say that for me, the practical dimension implementation of the AfCFTA is key, is very important now. I remember that at the beginning, we had the NACCIMA dialogue series, and NACCIMA was one of the first to start this dialogue series, way back when I joined NACCIMA in 2003. And it was a reflection of the vision of people like Yailo Day, your good self, Engineer Jani, and of course, we did a lot of work in that particular area. Eventually, we worked closely with the National Action Committee and all of that. But let me quickly address some issues because I want to take it from the perspective which you brought up, the question of implementation and importance of, they said that philosophers have always interpreted the world, but the challenge is how to change it. So a lot of what we have had today, very, very informative, very useful, but how do we compete? How do we make sure that we position ourselves to compete? And I say, yes, we can compete. And two things, a few issues. One, we have to identify the areas of how we can compete. It is key and very important. I can say now practically, de facto, Nigerian companies are already trading within the framework of the AfCFTA. I served 4 years in Nairobi, half of it as acting high commissioner in Kenya, 2003, 2007. There were no Nigerian banks practically at that particular period. But fast forward to this particular period, you have practically all the banks, you have Zenith, you have GTB, So this is an indication that yes, we can, and this is an area we should ramp up in terms of financial services. If you look at the creativity sector, as I speak to you, there's a Nigerian team that was taken out, they left this evening. They arrived South Africa this morning, and I know people who are involved in it. The South African Tourism Organization did not just send in their officials. They took Nigerians who are digital influencers and they've taken them to South Africa. They're shooting a series in terms of smart money in South Africa. So this is an indication of the capacity we're talking about as far as this, of course, this issue itself is concerned. Now, in other areas too as well, As I speak to you, I'm outside the country and I've traveled around the US a little bit as part of my vacation. And some of the places where I get to, African markets, where they are, we have packaged Nigerian products, yam flour, gari, yams, and everything. They are there, and they can. They are in high demand in those places. And by the way, the other day I forgot my orobo in Nigeria, and I wanted to buy orobo in a shop, here somewhere, in LA, and they were selling one orobo for $5. One orobo for $5. Now, I mean, I'm just giving this practical example because it is necessary for us to give practical example of the potentials of what can be done. This is key and this is very important. The NNPC, the NNPC, I'm a brother from NNPC, made mention of export houses outside. When we went to Bamako, Mali, the other day, there was a Nigerian who had opened a Nigerian export house in Bamako, in Bamako, in Mali, a Nigerian export house. Do we know of it? Because it was mentioning of what they've done in Cairo and in Togo and others. This is an indication of what we can do. We need to identify these specific places as far as this is concerned. It is key and very important. Now, if you look at the area of the tech industry as well, the Nigerian financial tech sector, I mean, it's a huge sector. It has grown. We've had companies that have come in to buy the Nigerian tech. So these are areas we should identify and see what can be done as far as this, of course, is concerned. Because like I said, at this period, a large number of the presentations I've made, they've made so many presentations for us. How do we move forward? And that was one of the challenges I saw as DG NACCIMA, a former diplomat who was involved in trade negotiations and now had to face, they say you face the blazing of the AK-47 when you now have to do this implementation. And you know it, Mr. President, that this is the area. And I sincerely hope that as we move on, as part of our recommendations in this particular area, to identify the competitive area. Deliberately, sir, I put my hands up. I'm wearing an Nigeria dress. I'm wearing an Nigeria dress. And I remember myself and Jaludi went to Abeokuta to launch the authentic Ogun dress. And when I go around some of the markets in here these days, I see some of these Adiras in there. How did they come there? So this is an area of strength for us. And this is where the question of the subnationals. What is Ogun State government doing as far as promoting the authentic Ogun dress? In context of the AfCFTA, I can see some of our sisters who are here with their headgears in terms of what exactly is happening in terms of the Nigerian Union. It's a reflection of the fact that at the subnational level, we should also move and encourage the respective states to be able to get themselves together, to be able to put the framework together in terms of, if you go to some parts in Abeokuta now, it is so sad. You know the kind of address they are selling? These are addresses which came in from China. I mean, this is embarrassing. Yet we have the capacity to be able to do. Professor, tell me, of course, I think Professor should rate the question of demand side. It is key and very important. But like I said, if you even go outside, like I said, I served in Nairobi in Kenya, and I went around East Africa from time to time. I was in Uganda, and I saw also some of the Nigerian products after there. And when they got to know I'm Nigerian, I said, how can we get more of this? I said, what they say is the best. So implicitly, in terms of the demand side, I know we have to ramp up in terms of productive services, productivity capacity, but we do have products. The issue is marketing to be able to penetrate those areas. All the issues which we've discussed today are of course, quite important in terms of those things. But like I said, at the end of the day, the thing is, how do we practically take advantage of this? Luckily for us, the AfCFTA is a long distance race, but now is the time for us to be able to start thinking. And I'm saying that as NACCIMA, I've seen it as former DG NACCIMA, we have a lot of role to play. Because when I was on the seat, because I have links and contact with practically all Nigerian missions abroad and most of our ambassadors, I get calls every day that, look, can you help us? We need products, we need Nigerian businessmen to be part of this. But like you said, to go back to the question you raised in terms of the financial component, it means somehow government would still have to be able to play through to support. Let me end with this story. Recently, I was reading, I'm very interested in the aviation sector. And Boeing complained somehow, that's when they were complaining to their government, that 3 China airlines, national airlines, China Southern China, and I think one other China, have ordered 292 Airbuses. I repeat, 292. One Airbus A320 Neo cost about $110 million. And Boeing started shouting and said, look, geopolitics seems to have become a problem for us in this particular area. How did China Airlines, instead of buying Boeing aircraft, they've gone on to buy Airbuses? Like I said, we have the capacity to compete. We identify our areas of competitive advantages. We work with the National Action Committee in this area. I'm glad the National Committee. And like I said, the creativity sector is also a key area. During the lockdown, I remember the case of the Bolanle St. Peter's case, in which nobody was going anywhere. But here we were. The digital ecosystem was taken advantage of by the terraculture, by Bolanle St. Peter's. And she put in Calcutta Queens online. 40,000 people logged on. Even if they are paying $1, that's an indication of the advantage as far as the tech industry is also concerned, and identify that particular area as a key area in terms of capacity to compete. Once again, it's a pleasure to even be given this opportunity. Yalodi also, by potentially talk about the question of payment system. I'm glad the PAPS, you know it, Mr. Chairman, the Pan-African payment system, NACCIMA is playing a very key role in terms of this particular area. So there's an area which will provide opportunity for, and not of course to forget our women in terms of their capacity to trade, as far as that is concerned. We see them all across West Africa, and within the context of the AfCFTA, let us all move them from de facto traders to de jure when effectively the AfCFTA takes off. And once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. We've covered a wide area of discussion, and I'm particularly happy about when you talked about identifying our area of strength. This is something we've been dancing around. Ministers' presentation and other presentations from government side alludes to we have identified areas of strength. Yes. Now, maybe it is now the duty of NACCIMA to take that areas of strength, and I mean, when I say NACCIMA, I mean the organized private sector now, which covers other bodies, and properly interrogate them, add to it, and make presentation to government as to how we can develop, because you cannot promote something you have not developed. It's just you can't serve amala that you have not turned on fire. It's not possible. So we need to identify this, work with them, agree, and move on. And secondly, the issue of services. You talk about finance, the creative industry, which is big, and then of course technology, which is one of the biggest exports of Nigeria, which should be under the AfCFTA, and of course agriculture and mining. So these are areas which we must be able to work around with. But the onus seems to be bouncing back on the organized private sector to really guard their loins, tighten their trousers, and really do something about this. Having said that, I want to invite Aisha Abubakar to comment about this. You know, Professor Aremo, when he was making his presentation, talked about domestication. He referred to the law, Section 12, subsection 1 of the Constitution, and that the fact that it's mandatory for our National Assembly to promulgate the agreement, treaty agreement as law, make it a law so that it can be properly domesticated, quote, and effective. And he highlighted the disadvantage of not doing this. The fact that it may make doing business very uncertain, it may make enforcement of rights uncertain and difficult, and that it ultimately may the market us if there's no clarity as to the current position of our law vis-a-vis the AfCFTA. Ajay, do you agree with him that it is mandatory on that? Okay, I don't want to discuss law now. I don't want to talk about how do you think we should proceed? Because I will take up the issue of law later as to whether that section 12.1 is been properly interpreted in Nigeria. Because I know that there's this deliberate tendency to want to look at the hard way of doing things, you know. So we'll join issue with the lawyers on that, my colleagues, no problem. But how do you think we should proceed with the issue of domestication, the issue of imbibing this AfCFTA to make it easy for our counterparts outside Nigeria to trade with us, and to make it easy for we to trade with our counterparts, and also to enhance and ensure clarity as to what we have to do.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone. First, let me congratulate the organizers for putting together a well thought and detailed presentation. The speakers have also spoken very well, and I just have a few pointers. Number one, thank you for letting me off the talk of the lawyers. You're a lawyer yourself, so we'll leave that to you. Secondly, I want to just say that we were a part of this, or I was a part of the AfCFTA process when it all began. I know we went to Niger almost 3 times or 4 times to discuss. The president of Niger was the chairman of the AfCFTA and everything. Unfortunately, I think we're still now reacting. As a private sector, we are reacting instead of being proactive. This thing was coming whether we liked it or not. And someone pointed out that all the 55 countries apart from Eritrea, which is us, have signed in. We've not moved. There's so many things that are hanging. And one of the issues is what you just mentioned, domestication. Unfortunately, my own fears are still for. I mean, thank God there's been a lot of improvement, updates coming from the NOTN office, coming from Ambassador Aga and everything. But we're still not in a comfortable place, especially when it comes to the issues of women and youth. And if I just put that together, I call it the MSNEs. We are still not together. Many of us just talk to AfCFTA as terminology. We still don't really understand what it means to us. When it becomes effective, we do not know how it is really going to, on a one-on-one, when you go down to the nitty-gritty, to my women, we all know AfCFTA, but what it means is implication. How do we prepare? How do we take the lead? We are still far, far, far away from it. But I'm very happy that NACCIMA has put this together. I'm very happy that the AfCFTA committee in NACCIMA is putting this together. My appeal would be for us to be able to bring it down to ABC level so that our women can understand and participate. Because in all honesty, when you're talking about domestication, these are women who are trading. They're already trading informally. Whether by using one currency or not, they're trading. They're making a lot of money. Some of them can do much more. How do we build capacities? How do we ensure that the rules and regulations, the rules of origin, the protocols all involved, how do we ensure that they benefit our MSMs? And you know, we keep saying, Nigeria, we have the youth population, we have the numbers, we have the talent, we have the skill, but if we do not prepare ourselves for the competition that is coming ahead, we will be falling far behind. So yes, in terms of domestication, in terms of negotiation, in terms of the protocols being in place, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we have to begin to do this right now. Ambassador Olikomi, who is always a he for she, have also touched on a number of issues that will affect us as women in this particular sector. So we need to be, I can't even emphasize it enough, but we need to be there. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I, again, think that you have, in line with the flow of discussion here today, you have highlighted a critical thing, which is the MSMEs are principally youth and women area, principally in many countries, including Nigeria. Now, you head NAWOC. Will it be okay if we expect NAWOC to provide leadership in having the women and youth side of the discussion in the AfCFTA implementation? Will it be fine to do that? Because I think the OPS, as well as generally, and NACCIMA in particular, should be able to give support to NAWOC to help to craft the input of the OPS into the discussion with that being led by Ambassador Yunov and all that at the NOTN. Will it be appropriate to expect that NAWOC will be able to do that if supported by NACCIMA?
You've captured it aptly, because one of my requests at the end of this program was going to be that if the AfCFTA committee can organize a workshop for our women NAWOC, and we will not limit it to just NAWOC, we will limit it to all the women in the OPS as well. If we could sit down and go through all these protocols one by one and find out what the implications are and what needs to be put in place. Certainly, and NAWOC will be very happy to drive this, because we are the beneficiaries of the AfCFTA. Whether we like it or not, we are the beneficiaries of the AfCFTA, but we need to understand what we're doing, whether we are doing where we're high corporate bodies or we're the traders at the borders and everything. Certainly it's a challenge we will take up, Mr. Chair. Hello, Mr. Chair. I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said the point is very well taken. If this is one of the things, one of the points that we're able to pin down here today, and for implementation in the very near future, I think our day will have been well made. So I thank you for understanding of this and how we have to proceed. So we note this down as part of the conclusions that are very important for immediate implementation. Thank you, Aisha. Dr. Okoha, my good friend, you lead the Nigerian Association of Nigerian Traders. You're a dogged fighter. We know you very well, and we appreciate your contribution. Now, one of the presenters talked about the need to have a strategy for growth for MSMEs. That is an OPS strategy for growth and MSMEs to enable them to develop capacity, help them develop the critical milestones of standards, traceability, and export-driven development. I mean, something that can give them knowledge about how to proceed within the AfCFTA to develop their structures to be able to produce for export. Yes, you know that in the past, and still in the present too, that the Nigerian traders have always traded throughout Africa. But this trade is principally in the informal side of the private sector. No records, standards can't be verified, the traceability is an issue, and they are subject to vagaries of many things. Now, if you can bring them into the formal sector, how do we, under the framework of AfCFTA, how do we support them to drive their growth, to help them in terms of compliance, standards, traceability, and actual practical production for export? Dr. Okoha. Dr. Okoha, the floor is yours.
Appears something is muted.
Yeah, it's still okay. Is on. It's muting and coming up.
maybe we should have committed this using relevant section of the Psalm and Quran to ensure that this technical dimension is held up properly.
The Secretariat, please see if you can track Dr. Koha. Meanwhile, I will want some of our presenters make some comments. Maybe if any one of us has any questions to ask either the presenters or the panelists, please indicate.
So I have a question for Ambassador Aga.
Okay, please proceed.
Can I ask the question? Ambassador Aga, I think he's still with us.
Please, Ambassador Ukoni, Ambassador Aga.
Thank you, sir. I want to say that we should congratulate ourselves for having the National Office on Trade Negotiations eventually. And I think I would like to ask him, in terms of the question of the capacity development, the link between the private sector and the National Office on Trade Negotiation, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm not sure if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is represented here, participating, because I cannot see effective collaboration between the Ministry of, as far as the National Office on Trade Negotiation. I'm saying it against the background of the fact that I served in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for 35 years. I worked in binational commissions and I worked in the Joint Commission too as well. There was no NOTNT when I served in. Now that it has been created, don't you think that it is necessary to have competent hands included in the National Office on Trade Negotiation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Myself and yourself, we worked closely together in the 1990s. While I was in the permission in New York, you were also in Geneva. And that now that the chairman was talking about the question of the Nigerian missions and the AfCFTA and MFA. So what do you think specifically you can do to raise the core people, professionals, as far as the question of the National Office on Trade and the issues of trade negotiation is concerned? I'm saying that because I've taken the issues up with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs too as well. Which department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? And I guess maybe perhaps we're suggesting that it may be necessary to second some people to the National Office on Trade Negotiation to capacitate the young diplomats in the Nigerian Foreign Service. I want Ambassador Aga to please kindly address that, because like I said, twofold: the private sector itself, because Aisha, the Nawa person, also raised the question of a lot of women who are trading, but whether you sign any agreement with them, they carry their luggages, their the ugu seller who sells ugu across the place. So in terms of the foreign affairs, raising the capacity of young diplomats, and then the women too as well, in context of your work in the National Office on Trade Negotiations. Thank you for indulging me, Mr. Chair.
Ambassador Aga, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the question he raised is relevant, but it has also raised some issues which are things I have never wanted to put in the public domain. I want him to know that the concept of NOTN was to have staff seconded from MDAs into NOTN. As at the time I came on board last year, NOTN had started recruiting its own staff to the point that as we speak, NOTN has 164 or 46 officers, all categorized as trade negotiators, including the storekeeper. That's what I inherited. That's what I'm trying to address. So as a civil servant, I've gone to the office of the head of civil service. We're trying to do a scheme of service. We're trying to work with the ODD to develop a structure, manning levels. We're trying to do correct placement, because some of the appointments were as if it was a bazaar. Somebody graduated in 1999 or finished youth service 1999 and was given level 17. So these are things we need to do. I've never wanted to put this in the public domain, but because you raised it, I have to, so that I don't leave you in doubt as to what the challenges are and what we are trying to do. But in terms of capacity building, Since I came on board, we have organized 2 trade negotiation skills simulation courses with 60 participants drawn from all MDAs, trade-related MDAs, the private sector, civil society, and the media. And I believe NACCIMA has sent participants to most of these courses. I'm hoping that we'll do about 5 of these courses so that at the end of the day, we would have had about 300 people trained. And the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is always giving 2 slots on these courses. Maybe I should also take this opportunity to make a few comments on an issue that has come up here, which is domestication. Yes, the Constitution provides for domestication of agreements. But the question, at what stage, given the permissiveness of the law, at what stage do you domesticate an agreement? My view is that the AfCFTA is not yet matured for domestication because, as you can see, we're still negotiating.
Yeah. No.
So which animal are you domesticating?
Yeah.
And for instance, the protocol on women and youth in trade, even the terms of reference have not been developed, not to talk of the key provisions of that protocol, the zero draft that will be subjected to discussion. So when you have all this going on, I think it's better to get people appreciate where we are. Why are a lot of these things under the radar? The reality is that trading formally, or what do I call it, formal trading may have started on 1st January 2021, but no actual trading has taken place.
Yeah, right.
From my briefing, you would have seen that even the trading documents are not yet ready.
Yeah.
So if we are to do the right thing, we should be following the process also and seeing how it's evolving. These are things that you don't rush. But in any case, how do SMEs and business benefit from free trade agreements? It's not rocket science. You first need to go and look at the schedule. Some of these schedules, tariff schedules, the concessions are not commercially viable. Take the ECOWAS CET where Nigeria is involved too. Some of the tariff band at 5%, we are going to liberalize over 10 years at 0.5% per year. Is that commercially meaningful for any trader? So we need to go through the different schedules. And if you remember my brief, I think only about 26 or so schedules have been verified. So as the schedules get verified, we now need to know what the tariff, educate the private sector on what the tariff concessions are, the preference margins are. Then we look at the size of the market. We look at the quality in the market. We then train them on how to produce, how to apply for the rules and benefit from the preferences, how to ask for advanced rulings on their applications. These are things that we need to be done when the actual trading starts. But again, we had discussed this issue with the National Action Committee on the need of starting a training for the private sector on the documents as they are evolving before actual trading starts. So I think this is like a process. That's why I was talking about public-private sector collaboration. And like on the binational convention, the process today is different. In as much as binational commissions are important, it is also good for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Trade, NOTN, to monitor the trade experiences and challenges of Nigerian businesses. At the end of every year, we should be able to have a publication that speaks about opportunities for Nigerian traders across different countries and regions. We should be able to talk about challenges or barriers to Nigeria's trade across different regions and countries. That should be the basis of our engagement with our trading partners. Maybe I should just stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. As I've hinted earlier, we will look for another opportunity to actually look at the meaning of what Section 12(1) of the Constitution is actually saying, and whether it even applies at all to the AfCFTA framework. Again, thank you very much for the clarification that even from your own point of view, the issue of domestication is not yet ripe. But then we can still go on doing business under the country. So that's one. Two, sir, you have the ambassador has raised some very critical issues, again, which goes to the importance of the OPS taking this matter very serious, the role they have to play. For instance, he has talked about we need to engage countries about the challenges and opportunities and whatever that is that exists for Nigerian business people. We need to give feedback to government as to what are our challenges, what are the things we think we are strong in, so that government can take this on in discussing trade agreements and having trade discussions and negotiations with countries. But if Nigeria goes to Kenya and just talk trade generally without any input from the OPS, we are just wasting our time. Because government does not sell Gary, neither do they sell, neither do they do Nollywood. It's the private sector that does it. So this is part of the things I think the private sector on their own must raise up. I see that Dr. Ken has joined us, a good friend. We're happy to have you back. I have been monitoring I see that you are here. Okay, you have two platforms. Maybe that's where the issue is. So I would like you to intervene now. I had wanted you to talk about the issues of how do we grow the strategy for growing the MSME opportunities within the framework of the AfCFTA, knowing that one, MSMEs contribute very largely more than any other to inter-African trade. That's one. Two, these MSMEs have been doing this forever, including today, informally. Now, and of course, informal trade has a lot of challenges. No records, no statistics, no protection, and so on and so forth. Even the dispute resolution may be inchoate and so on. So, and of course, the issue of standards, traceability. How do you think your traders can be enhanced, who are mainly SMEs, their position can be enhanced within the framework of the AfCFTA, and what should Nigeria be doing in this line? What should the organized private sector do? What should NANS do to support them? And how do the government support NANS to achieve this? Thank you. Dr. Okwa.
Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. Thank you so much, distinguished panelists and participants. I think you captured this very eloquently and succinctly. If we have, according to the AfCFTA Secretariat, the whole of Africa, we have SMEs covering over 87% of the entire space, business space, then it means that we have to dot the lines for them. We have to prepare them. We have to handhold them. And if we need to handhold them, it means also we also need to visit, or rather revisit, our impact and readiness analysis, the study that we had in Nigeria. I recall, if I'm not mistaken, at about 102, page 102 to 104 of the impact and readiness study, it was talking about empowerment of the SMEs, because these are the people who are going to do the business of the AfCFTA. These are the people who are going to be the beneficiaries of the AfCFTA in the first place. These are the people who are also going to pay more taxes to the government at the end of the day, out of their benefits, out of their profits. If that is the case, we need to go back to that particular study. What are those things that we are provided for them to be empowered? within the context of the Central Bank of Nigeria, there are facilities that were made available for these people to grow, to be empowered, So, and if the facilities are there, created for them, what is it that is holding them from accessing this? Why? Report that we have today on our table that will show these are the people that benefited. This is how much it impacted on them. This is how much it's impacting on the economy. We have to every time create these policies and just leave them in abeyance? My answer is no. Now we move a bit from the SME, creation. I crave indulgence. Let's look at, today, what we need to look. Preparing our people towards the implementation of the AfCFTA is almost going to conclusion now. I know items of the rules of origin have been agreed upon. If that is the case, it means we are coming close to the end of negotiation process on trade anytime. The question will now be, what is the level of preparedness of the customs for the implementation? 2, what is the awareness level of the knowledge capacity of the private sector on the contents of the AfCFTA and the implementation readiness? 3, what is the organization level of the sectors that will be ready to benefit? 4, how are we awakened, even in terms of, beyond the goods sector, what's the services sector? The 5 sectors that are being liberalized, the financial services of this world that Ambassador mentioned earlier, the transport sector, the tourism sector, the distribution sector. How prepared are these coming up? Because they are also, this component have major chunk of SMEs also in Nigeria. Now, finally, do we have lessons that we have learned from previous agreements like the ETLS? Do we have lessons that will take us over, carry over to the AfCFTA that will help us to implement effectively and gain benefits for the SMEs as well as the government? Do we also have lessons that we have learned from the border closure activities that we have done that we are not practically, totally in consonance with the law, in consonance with operational realities, like the border closure? What lessons did we learn? Some of those, for instance, the warehouses dotted along the buffer zones, along the corridors. There was an agreement that these, warehouses must be demolished so that smugglers will not use them as empires for the smuggling to continue, for us to be raped again under the AfCFTA. The question is, to what extent have we been able to mobilize the political will to get all of this crushed out so that we don't come back to a point where we'll be looking at border closure again? Where are the realities on ground? What is happening to smuggling? To what extent have we been able to make sure that this, the open doors and, corners are tightened? So these are the issues I have. Now, time will not permit us to look at some legal issues. You've mentioned one of them, which has to do with domestication. The second part of it is the dispute settlement mechanism in the AfCFTA. How are we aware? How are we practically as industrialists, as private sector actors involved in this dispute settlement? Why are we not parties to it? Then I am thinking also, and this is my parting word, that while we are looking at the SMEs, we must also come up to a point where government, represented by the NAC, as well as the NOTN, will sit down and come up with a template that shows the thematic issues on the negotiation. 1, what have been negotiated? 2, what were the concerns raised? 3, what are the rationales for those issues that are negotiated and the decisions taken? 4, what actions do we need to take within the implementation curve? Where do these actions take us? And on like that. And I think this will help us to do a well-serviced, justiciable impact on the AfCFTA, on our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As usual, you've been very incisive. Thank you very much for your input and your leadership in this sector. That you can see clearly that there's a lot to be done. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot to be done. Many of the questions you have, even though yes, government seems to, well, government is playing a leadership role in this, the NAC and the negotiation and all that. And there's always this tendency to work in parallel lines. You know, government is going along the one straight line. And of course, there's no handshake or strong handshake or proper handshake. There always seems to be this little gap that does not allow proper communication between government and the OPS. It is not only on AfCFTA. That is the culture that has seemed to be preponderant over the years now. Even though we acknowledge the point made by Yalode that about 35 years ago, there was this understanding that anytime government wants to put in some economic or other policies, they invite the private sector to come. What is your area of interest? When the policy is put in place on a regular basis, they call them, tell us, how far have we said? What are your challenges? What are the issues? I think that what discussion are brought down, that there's need to re-engineer and reactivate that platform so that we will be able to have a handshake rather than working in parallel lines. Look at, for instance, the last suggestion by Dr. Kohada about having a session to discuss thematic issues, or a platform to discuss thematic issues of how far have we gone, where are we, why are we there, and so on and so forth. These are part of the things that, you know, that we as organized private sector must push to government. I think that's the point you are making, and I agree with you. Even the issue of ADR too. Government is not involved in ADR, even though government will end up going to sign on our behalf the protocols on ADR, but we are the people involved in ADR. What as NACCIMA or NANT or all the other key arms of the OPS, what's their position? What's their presentation? What do they want government to do? So that we can ask them. And it is very possible that when we've made this presentation, the government must consider it. So I want, at this stage, before we begin to round down, I want to invite, okay, I see that Dr. Etim, is it Dr. Etim? Dr.
Etim, sir.
Etim?
Just David Etim. Leave the doctor, leave that. Exactly.
Okay, it's all right. Your David, that is the King David, right? Please, you can say, if you can make, hold on, you can make your intervention. Thereafter, I'm going to call Engineer Jani, the second deputy, to give us his view, because a lot of burden is going to be placed on his shoulders, which is very substantial shoulders in the committee, to tell us how they're going to do. So we will call Engineer Jani, but King David, please, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Actually, I hope not to take up to 2 minutes. Firstly, on the issue, just some points that I noted, I remember that at many years back, NACCIMA was driving the issue of certificate of origin. Well, I've heard this before, but now it's formal that that issue of certificate of origin has shifted to the Nigerian Customs as the custodian. okay, as a focal point, they call it, for the issuers. Now, well, that's noted. Now, when Francis was talking about the SMEs and the aggregation and consolidation centers, I would like to say that I'm glad to hear all of these things coming from government, but it's clear that the Calabar Chamber of Commerce, working through the Calabar and Gulf of Guinea Municipal and Trade Center, is way ahead of the curve, because all the participants, all your key actors today are people we are already interacting with in terms of developing the regional trade hub that is supposed to drive trade between West and Central Africa. One of the things that Ambassador Aga stated about Nigeria's, I don't know how to put it now, but when we're talking about the issue of the maritime trade links, and he said that in terms to be able to have that conversation, that there's so much retardation in Nigeria's policies that we are nowhere near that in terms of beginning to discuss the trade, maritime trade links, formal maritime trade links, okay, that would then be able to move us away from the informal sector into the formal sector. So I just want to say that I am very glad and very excited to see that the Calabar Chamber of Commerce is way ahead of the curve. And while the system may not be perfect, but we are beginning to build structures that will test the system and provide the feedback that the system requires to refine itself. A question I'd like to address to Professor Aremu is the issue of, okay, now we say there's no domestication, but what if active participants or private sector players decide to, let's say, since Nigeria has not domesticated the law and Ghana, let's say, for example, has domesticated. So Nigerian businessman and the Angolan businessman decide to go and sign a contract in Ghana using Ghana jurisdiction as the jurisdiction to take precedence in resolution of disputes, okay? Because that particular environment has domesticated. Would that be, well, even though the goods of origin may come out of Nigeria, but the contract and its jurisdiction, chosen jurisdiction, will be Ghana. How will that work? You know, I just want to get clarity on that, because clearly we are way ahead of the curve. I also want to, Dr. Derek Omohe, when he was making his presentation, spoke about some packaging they're doing, the bond they're doing about $6 billion. I want to say that we are way ahead of you guys. The Calabar and Gulf of Guinea.
Okay, David,
we are, let me just wrap up. Thank you. That's just, yes, we are way ahead of the curve in that we have positioned a $2 billion package, okay, which is going to come from several sources that will be able to support regional trade in the eastern part of Nigeria. The acting DG of NACCIMA is aware of this, which is being prepared by Deloitte. So we are way ahead, and we want to invite both the national and other participants to please come into Calabar and see what we are doing. And we'll be very happy to share what we have done so far and see how we can scale up to the national level to be able to, take this model to the national level. Kamar, who is the technical advisor to the minister, is very aware. Everybody is very aware of what we're doing. And I just wanted to put it in the public domain that really we're ahead of the curve and we're very proud of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, David. I will ask Professor Aremu to respond because you directed a question to him. But just before I do that, I want Engineer Jani, who is the head of the desk for NACCIMA-AfCFTA, please note the points made by David Etim, and please, I'll be happy if you can move him to the committee so that we can escalate what they're doing in the Calabar and the southeastern side to the national level. Is it because whatever happens, we must operate on the national level so that we create opportunities for everybody to key into it. This is a national matter. It's not sectional in any way. But we appreciate your effort and we thank you for your leadership. Professor Aremu, please, if you can, kindly respond very briefly to the intervention of King David.
Thank you, our chairman. First of all, before I go to the issue of domestication, let me react to what my sister talked about Yalode with respect to issue of single currency. By where I sit in the ECOWAS Commission, as on Sunday, all the heads of state have agreed to have a payment system as a supplementary act. That is to say that we trade in our national currencies. If I want to buy anything in Ghana, once my account is debited in Naira, the man that is going to be paid will be paid in cedi, and then there is going to be the connection of currency to pay between Nigeria and Ghana. So there is no problem of payment. And that is why Pan-African payment system under African Export and Import Bank, they put in place Pan-African payment and settlement system. So there is not going to be any problem in terms of payment, whether it's an ECOWAS Commission, because we are having ECOWAS payment and settlement system, and the continental level, we are going to be having Pan-African payment and settlement system as well. Back to the issue of domestication. Negotiation in trade is not ending. It has never ended. It will continue to go ahead. So you don't domesticate, and my friend, Aga, just to react to you, you are the boss in this particular area. 1947, when GATT started the negotiation, we have 8 rounds full of negotiation until the last regular round, 1986 to 1994, that give birth to WTO. Since 1995, when WTO was created, negotiation continued under the ministerial conference. And we just finished the 12th ministerial conference in Vienna just last month, towards the end of last month, full of negotiation. I don't think it is towards the end of negotiation that you domesticate. Right now, under African Continental Free Trade Area, the framework agreement has been finalized, which shows Nigerian preparedness, and we have agreed, ratified on the 5th of December. So why is that one not domesticated? So what we are saying is that domestication is a continuous process as long as negotiation continues, so that to make sure that we are not in any way shortchanging ourselves from not having a domestic law cover. So that is what is actually necessary. So I will suggest that we put in place, okay, take for instance, our people under trading services, which is still under negotiation. We are the one to trade. That is one of the strongest areas where Nigeria is having comparative and competitive advantages. Is it not good that right now, under the 4 modes in the 5 priority sectors, that they start to be able to be talking and negotiating with other partners across Africa on mutual recognition agreements under mode 1, under mode 2, under mode 3, under mode 4, in all the priority sectors, that each of them have subsectors as well. So that immediately, some of these things are finalized, we can have a law that covers us. That is the essence of having a provision within our domestic law that we make opportunity that we are complying. So that is exactly what we are saying. We can't finish negotiation in trade. It continues. I was in the last ministerial conference, my friend Aga knows, I mean the one we have in Argentina. I was not available in the last one, but there was a lot of negotiation there. The negotiation continues. We need domestic cover so that people can have confidence in whatever talk they are making at international level, at continental level, over after. We need that particular thing because money will be passing through, trade will be passing through in case there's a trade infraction involving money. Under which law? And that's the question. And then people need to have confidence in it. So I thank NACCIMA for bringing this up and then giving me this particular topic to talk about. Well, I'm not a lawyer. I only read some aspects of it and possibly publicity secretary of Nigeria Society of Financial Law. But the little I know about it, I think we need to be able to make sure that will cover our transaction. We cannot finish negotiation of this thing. After we finish phase 1 of economic integration of Africa, which is free trade area, we move to custom union. That will involve another negotiation. After that one, we move to common market. That will involve another one. We move to the final, which is economic union. And each of these have variety and different technicalities in negotiation.
Thank you very much, Professor Aremu.
Thank you, sir.
I want Engineer Jani to address the issue of how do we go forward from here? Because we spent almost 4 hours of very insightful discussion. You are chairing the committee, you are in all the national bodies. How do you proceed from here? What's your takeaway? How do you think the organized private sector should, one, plug all the holes where we have identified here today, the fact that there's so many things pending and hanging that we need to work on, the fact that there's still this parallelism between government and the organized private sector. How do we create the handshake? How do we continue to be able to make input to policy? Please, and of course, also tackle specific issues like somebody talked about. It was actually Ukawa who was talking about ADR, border closure, non-implementation of the terms of the border reopening, and were they necessary in the first place? What is lessons learned from the ETLS, the border closure, the AGOA, and so on and so forth. And the 5 key areas he identified. What input can we make as to the preparedness of custom, despite that they're taking more responsibilities? You know about all these issues, and please, why do you think you can reorganize restructure the organized private sector to be able to be impactful on this area? Engineer Jani.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the excellent work that you have been doing. And even in your summaries and the way you handle this thing, you have brought some of the salient issues, to the front burner. And the whole essence of bringing this galaxy of professionals and a resource person is to be able to bring out all the gaps, all the areas that we have gaps, and see how the NACCIMA can now sit down and tackle it. In fact, immediately after this meeting at 2:30, we have the NACCIMA-AfCFTA committee meeting with a view, to distilling, what has been presented today, and for us to come up with a strategy, effective strategy, for the private sector, to be able to address these very important issues. And one of the things that we have suggested as a program of activity is to visit the key stakeholders, starting from Mr. President, the Commander-in-Chief, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, all the stakeholders, and in the Nigerian Governors Forum, Chief of Staff to the President, the Minister of Industry Trade, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Transportation, the Controller General of the Nigerian Customs Service, the Executive Secretary of Border Communities Development Agencies, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, the police, Managing Director of Ports Authority. These are very, very important stakeholders that we intend to visit. And not forgetting that also, we intend to also go and discuss these issues at the AfCFTA Secretariat in Accra, with His Excellency Wamkele. So we want to have this. I don't want to preempt the outcome of the meeting we intend to have this afternoon. All the issues that have been raised, we have taken note of. The issue that the Hajia Aisha mentioned regarding our work, how we can get our women on board them properly. This is an area that we're taking very seriously. In terms of what Calabar Chamber is doing, I've been following up. I'm involved with what they are doing in the Gulf of Guinea. So we can onboard into the AfCFTA program. So, Mr. Chairman, I quite appreciate, and I know that I saw that you are taking notes of all the very serious contributions that have been made. And we have 2 rapporteurs who have been working since the beginning of this exercise. In fact, we thought that it wouldn't take, but now we have exhausted time we spent almost about 4 hours. So I want to really thank all the contributors, all the people who have submitted papers, because people have been sending certain things was also behind the scenes because they couldn't get onto the platform. So these are things that we're going to combine, and next I will come up with a proper paper, which will be the position of the organized private sector. So we look forward to doing that, and I want to thank everybody for giving us this opportunity and responding to our call, even though it was at a short notice. But now that we have decided,
thank you very much. Thank you very much. The hint is taken. I don't know if there's any other person who wants to. Okay, Professor Abimbola wants to say something, and Ambassador Aga too. Ambassador Aga, please kindly allow me to call the lady first, and then I'll come back to you immediately. Thank you, Professor Abimbola.
Very kind of you to grant this opportunity to me. I'll be very, very brief. I just want to encourage NACCIMA to say that domestication is a very long process. I think it has been said, but I want to give an example to say that look at COMESA and REC, Regional Economic Community of East Africa and South Africa, are very well organized. They are very well integrated. So for us in Nigeria, let's look towards ECOWAS as well, because some of the things we are doing, ECOWAS can easily, what is already in the ECOWAS protocol can easily apply, so that we sort of, work within that framework. It does not negate what we are working towards in terms of continent-wide. The second one is what Ambassador Ayola Olukomi referred to. The diaspora market is huge. It's huge. NACCIMA must look towards the demand side, as I said earlier. What are the customer requesting for? Example that Ambassador Ayola emphasized is very, very apt. The market is already there. Therefore, if you want to wait for these, the bureaucratic system, we will not be there. And I look at, if you had started 30 years ago, when the Americans were telling us, I will never forget that. No, it wasn't a secondary thing. It wasn't a theoretical thing. They were speaking to me. And I have people who knew that I did this role, and the US Embassy will always have the record as well. And it was still in the States thing. We really have to get NACCIMA to understand that they are the biggest fish in town regarding this, but they must lead the way through their members. That's all I want to say. I do appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Prince Adetokunbo Kayode.
Ambassador Aga.
Yes, thank you, Prince. I just wanted to clarify the points that were made by my good friend, Professor Aremu. My intention is not to leave this audience with any wrong impression. So I'm just trying to correct an impression. If you look at the WTO, at the end of the Uruguay round, you had the final act, which were the agreements that were negotiated, and the agreement establishing the WTO. These are the documents that were ratified and even domesticated by various countries. When you launch the new Doha round, you have all kinds of issues that are ongoing. The trade facilitation agreement was concluded in 2013, was ratified, and is operational and can be domesticated. Just at the last ministerial, a truncated version of the fisheries subsidies agreement was concluded, which you can also ratify and sign the protocol to annex it to the agreement. So the processes are different. But here you are talking of the AfCFTA as an agreement with different protocols, which are still under negotiation. That's the difference. If you finish one protocol and you want to ratify a particular protocol, that's a different thing. But none of the protocols, whether on services, whether on goods, and even the other areas, have been concluded. Some don't even have terms of reference. That is the difference. So if you use the parallel of the WTO and all the ongoing negotiation, you will discover that at each time an agreement is concluded, that agreement is the subject of ratification and maybe domestication. But when you have not reached an agreement, what are you domesticating? What animal are you domesticating? That's the point that we have to bear in mind. And this is not a legal issue. It's merely a matter of reality. What is there? That what are you committing to? Will you commit it into your national law, even when you don't know what the outcomes will be? So I don't want, it's not a debate, but I just wanted to clarify this. Using the WTO example that negotiations are still ongoing does not mean that for WTO, it is when an agreement is reached, it is concluded. I gave the example of the trade facilitation agreement and the recently concluded fishery subsidies agreement. These are treated separately, or even the amendment, the 3 paragraph 6 amendment, which was ratified. So these are concrete outcomes. The AfCFTA remains an incomplete outcome. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you very much for the clarification. Now, Professor Aremu, the King David asked that, do you intend to respond to the issue of cross jurisdictions in contract dispute resolution that he raised? Do you want to, are you going to be able to do that right now? And I think after your intervention, we'll take one more point, then we'll round up. I want to see how we can close by 2 o'clock.
Thank you, the chairman. You know, I confess that
very briefly, please. Yes,
I'm not a practical lawyer, so but the little I know about it. One thing I know is that in terms of the dispute settlement system of African Continental Free Trade Area, it's going to be state to state. That means if economic actors have trade infraction among themselves, it's going to be their state government that is going to adjudicate. And that itself is a very difficult situation, particularly under a dispensation in which a particular person that go into that activity does not have the preference of the party in power. So secondly, we know how things get delayed, but business is a fast thing. So I think that the dispute settlement body of African Continental Free Trade Area, they are still having a lot of discussion to be able to make sure that the state-to-state approach is not going to be in any way detrimental to the kind of brevity and quick dispensation of justice. One thing that is inside the dispute settlement again is that it gives opportunity for settlement outside the court jurisdiction, and that is in terms of arbitration. So, well, arbitration may be faster, but we need actually to look at the existing arbitration channels in the world, and then which one are we using? Is it UNCITRAL? Is it the ICSID, or which one? So these are the issues with the dispute settlement we have to come up. And I think that discussing like this, we should be abreast with them and then get the legal luminary like our chairman to be able to come into this thing very well so that we can get a very good opportunity. One thing is this, a one small case affecting Nigeria, whether for and against, that is thrown into dispute settlement and came out to be unfavorable, people will not be happy again. Whether it's a result of non-recognition of our domestic law, whether it is a result of other things, it's not going to be an easy matter. So let us enter after with all preparedness with our domestic law as well as the judicial system. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think we can leave it there on the issue of dispute resolution. And I think this is one of the issues also that the Secretariat will take up. Luckily for us, for instance, we have a National Dispute Resolution Center based here in Abuja. Nigeria has domesticated a lot of laws on arbitration, mediation, and so on. And I think NACCIMA is in a position actually to take a stand on this and make a presentation to NAC as well as to Accra, the Secretariat, as to our own input, our suggestions as to how this will be done all over the world. ADR is done by parties, because it's parties that enter the contract, okay? And it is when you begin to turn it to an official and the civil service thing that you begin to have problems. But when it's done based on party in contract, then you achieve a lot. But again, this is one of the issues which I think will be taken up. And now, finally, I don't know whether the gentleman representing the NDPC is still around. The representative of NDPC, I don't know whether he's still around. I wanted him to make some comments about export processing centers development. But if it's not around, these are some of the issues which you can take up with them. NACCIMA can take up with them later, and we'll see how that moves. Is the NEPC, are they still with us? Okay, they are not with us. So I want to, Ambassador, if you, with your kind permission, I wanted to round up as at now, this 2 o'clock. Is the Otumba Dele?
Chair, if you just permit me a few seconds, sir.
Okay, proceed there, sir. Then Otumba Dele will give the.
Like we all observe, the EFCT is a long distance way. We'll continue this kind of sensitization and to work on it. Then secondly, I think I noticed the conspicuous absence of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I don't know if there's anybody who's here in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because you had asked me a question about that and also discussed the issue. Because at the end of the day, even if you want to say the African missions, ambassadors and others, maybe perhaps next time around, we should also invite some of our ambassadors. I noticed that recently they had a meeting with some of them. Maybe I want to suggest to the Secretariat to please kindly make sure that the Trade and Investment Division and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is constantly invited to this event, in future. But apart from that, I think it's been a wonderful thing. And I thank you for the brilliant and competent manner you've handled this, you've piloted this flight, which did not run into any clear air turbulence. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador. Engineer Jani, kindly note the points by our DG Emeritus, and we need to engage actually with that department, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We do not want them to think that they are Mandarins or they're living abroad. Everything they do affects us. We should be part of it. I should also extend a hand of fellowship and cooperation to them. Is the Otumba Dele on platform? If it's not, may I invite the acting DG to give the vote of thanks? Just summary and vote of thanks. Acting DG.
Thank you very much, Sir National Vice President Prince Ade Tokunbo Kaisan. It was a pleasure watching you work chairing this session. I want to thank all the speakers, thank the chairman of the NACCIMA-AfCFTA committee, who's also the second deputy national president. Thank the national president of NACCIMA, who, despite his busy schedule, made an appearance. Thank every speaker, including our former DG and my mentor, Ambassador Ayola Olukoni, Professor Temi Abimbola, Professor Jonathan Aremu, Mr. Francis Anatogu, Mr. Legosi Nwaebu, our eminent panelists. I thank you all. And I want to assure you that the Secretariat has noted all these comments and will put together an outcome document that will definitely drive the activities of the NACCIMA Secretariat. Once again, thank you to the chairman of the session and all participants. Just to show how important this webinar has been. We started the webinar with around 70 participants, and 4 hours later, we're still at 45 participants, which is usually rare. So thank you all for sticking around, and we look forward to seeing you and hearing from you as we continue to engage with you on these issues of implementing the AfCFTA agreement for the benefit of the Nigerian private sector. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And please also endeavor to the outcome document should be circulated to all those who participated in this program so that we can continue to build up our interest and the intervention. Thank you. And God bless you. Madam Jupiter, good to see you.
Yes,
Prof.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm happy to be here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm happy about it.
Long day for me from early.
I sent out some
Dr. Dowdy, good to have you on this platform.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye.
Jovita, it's nice to see you here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Same here.
Thank you very much. It's been
Thank
a
you
long
very
time.
much.
You know.
Please, if we should read our comments and act on them, please. I sent something.
Ambassador Lukoni, when I come back to Nigeria, we know you are a Igbo man, but don't abandon us here.
I'm catching some rest. Yeah.
Yes. You deserve it.
Jupiter, thank you.
Thank you for being around.
Back so that we can continue where we stopped.
Thank you.
And Soja Obade, thank you for being around.
Creativity as well as the mining sector. I think that's one of the key areas we should start getting ready for now.
Please,
and like I said, I think we should also include in our recommendation the incoming government to make these issues a priority issue so that it's not lost in the midst of the election when the new government comes in.
Yes, and then we need to help them design a roadmap.
Yes,
exactly.
If you have a map, you will not get lost. We need to help them design a roadmap.
We should give them
the
a
priority areas.
Comes in.
We need to articulate it properly with them, and then we can achieve a lot by this. Anyway, Engineer Johnny is a leader in this. And
of course,
we're grateful
himself
for your leadership and your contribution.
Please, can I chip in something? I didn't hear I don't know whether it was discussed earlier, any export processing center in the East. We don't have such there. It should be.
Yes, I wanted to take that issue up, the issue of export processing centers. And it's actually closely linked with the issue of border towns development authority. But NEPC is doing something on it.
Yeah,
we can take it forward. It will be reflected in our